I'm going to record on this computer.
Okay, it says we're recording.
It is now recording.
Your blurb is done?
My blurb is done. It's over to you guys.
So, welcome to the Finding Your Footing, exploring the intersections of persona, skill set, and ANS as a newcomer to the SCA, as presented by Lord Nereügei.
Yay!
We in Lionsgate are proud of the Lions Den and all the hard work that Kiva and Jure are doing for this. It's pretty awesome. During the presentation, please make sure your microphones are off so that it cuts down on background noise. If you have questions, put it in the chat. That way we don't forget about it. After Nereügei's talk, we'll have a fireside chat where everyone can join in and ask questions of him, talk, all that kind of stuff, at least until Jure gets too tired and, as host, ends the meeting. So, without further ado, here's Nerg.
Mashik Bayartla. Samano, mini SCA name hin Nereügei. Onoroy Tigmini Sonsoj Ban Mashik Bayartla. Hello, everybody. My SCA name is Nereügei. Thanks for coming to listen to me tonight. I'm actually really excited. This should be a lot of fun. I've done one of these talks before at Nereügei in his house, and just doing a slideshow of kind of my trip to Mongolia, but I've never had a chance to kind of tie it in with what I've been doing in the SCA for the last little while. So it was really great of Kiva and Jure to ask me to do that. I just want to acknowledge that I live on the unceded land of the Squamish, Musqueam, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. And though it didn't start out this way, I feel that one of my goals in the SCA is to help decolonize the SCA itself. And it's important to recognize that simply acknowledging where we live doesn't necessarily mean that you're actually doing anything towards that decolonization. So small actions on a daily basis is what I hope to be able to do in its own little way, I guess, make a difference. Let me get my screen going. Hopefully this works. It worked earlier. There we go. I hope to show newcomers to the SCA what my path has looked like so far, delving into the arts and sciences in hopes of stoking your fires to dive in yourselves, and to maybe rekindle the joy of learning and exploring for those who have been in the SCA for a little while, who might want some new inspiration in renewing their relationship with ANS. So, tip number one, life is short, have fun. We often forget it's just a game, and life really throws a lot of curveballs at you, right? Because if we look back to how it started for me, that is a photo from the first day I went to practice. And some of you may or may not believe me, but it was June 10th, 2015. Really wasn't all that long ago. Some might recognize my opponent. That's Bjorn, Torbjorn. You only see the back of him. There's Bryn in the background, and he's still a squire. There's Lyric. We're in Kenrick's driveway. I am totally set sideways. I have no idea what I'm doing. And I had fun because Oswell was telling me, hey, you should come and try this. You'd have a lot of fun. I just happened to be out in the neighborhood for a motorcycle ride. He's like, oh, hey, come visit me. I'm at practice. Come say hi. And so I stop in and he looks at me. He's like, yeah, you know, you'd fit my armor pretty well, eh? So maybe you should try it on and just have some fun. And here I am, right? Of course, how it's going, totally different. That's me getting picked up by my wrestling opponent in Mongolia. And he's just about to drop me on my right leg and in the process, blowing out my ACL. This was last year, August 14th, 2019. It looks like I have him because I kind of have my arm around his head, but no. That guy has been training to wrestle his entire life, and he kicked my ass. definitely kicked my ass. But I'm not sideways, at least. I'm facing him directly. I guess little things, right? I really liked fighting. I got in the SCA and it was like the only thing I wanted to do. But as we know, when it comes to fighting in the SCA, borrowing helmets is probably the biggest problem, right? And for some of you who don't know, I'm a high school shop teacher, and so I've got a lot of time and some skills, and I can build helmets fairly quickly. And so I built a helmet, and it's a bit of a monstrosity. Thing's hideous. I did not know anything about the proportions, really, of the area around the chin. It fit my head. I've got a really big noggin, but it worked. All right. I built that July 2nd. So what is that? 3 weeks after I started fighting, I was like, oh man, I like this. This is a lot of fun. Let me build a helmet. And I didn't like it. So I built another one. I kind of like the opening hinge plate, cheek plates. And I had that one ready by the end of July because I had nothing better to do, being summer vacation. I figured, well, if I'm going to fight, I might as well enjoy myself, right? And of course, as things kind of developed, I clearly needed yet another helmet, and I had this one next year when I went to Clinton to go hang out and fight. And that is really my very simple motto. It's drink, fight, and look good. That being said, though, so much of what I do in the SCA, I'm really lucky to be able to do things that I do because I've got a lot of privileges going for me. I'm male, I'm able-bodied, I like fighting in a game that's very fight-oriented. Those are all huge bonuses for me. Having that access to a high school shop, being able to know how to weld and work with steel and all that stuff, at least in the beginning when it came to fighting, was really, really helpful for me, right? A lot of people don't have access to that kind of stuff. But obviously, fighting was my motivator for a lot of what I was doing. And once I got going, I mean, that's it. Tip 2, get going.
There we go.
Right? This was my introduction to the Mongols. I don't know if anybody knows where this is from. It's from the old game Civilization. Back in 1990. Ontario's got a very strong Norse tradition. Initially, that was the direction I was headed in if you looked at my second helmet, because, well, everybody's a Norse, and their armor looked really easy to make. It really all just came back to fighting. I remember going to Clinton the first year in 2015 there, and I was in a nylon tent, and I looked around, and I was like, oh man, there's some really nice tents out there, like, especially those yurts. Like, that looks like there's a lot of room. Kushag's like, yes. It was probably your yurt I was looking at, Kushag. And I was like, well, I can have a kitchen inside of it, and it seems like there's a whole bunch of things I could do with that. Yeah, let's go with that, right? And I kind of just spent the next year fighting, learning how to make armor, not really having a persona per se. And I figured, you know what, if I was going to do something in the SCA, I might as well actually go and explore my own culture, something that I haven't had a chance to do in quite a long time. I was born here, but my mom was very, Eastern in her traditions and whatnot. And I just felt like I'd really fallen out of practicing a lot of that culture. So I figured, what better place to do that than in the SCA? I settled on Mongol eventually because I didn't necessarily want to be Chinese, even though, obviously being being my actual thing, my heritage, it was like, well, I could try to branch out a little bit. So I figured, why not Mongols, right? And I figured, well, there's got to be a good way to actually properly play Mongol, to be a Mongol persona. I finally decided on Yuan Dynasty because I wanted to be able to show what a strong Asian persona might look like, right? And there were a lot of stereotypes that we were constantly fighting, right? I knew so embarrassingly little about the Mongols before I joined the SCA. and even my own culture, I only practiced when I was young. So I had a lot of preconceived notions about what Mongols were. You know, you hear about how they're a bunch of barbarians and all they did was run around Asia, leaving piles of skulls all across the steppes, and how half of the population in Asia is descended from Genghis Khan. And those media representations of Mongols, right? They're not great. I mean, this example here from the movie Mulan, not great, but not as bad as some other examples that have come through in the past. There's good old John Wayne playing Genghis Khan, right? Look at the dude on the right there, like, ugh, not great. And so I definitely wanted to dive into it, I guess, a little more intellectually that way. Just at this point here, if people have questions, I actually don't mind if you were to unmute yourself and just ask. I know we're going to talk a lot about everything I talk about later at the end, but I'm kind of also used to having students just interrupt me in the middle of my classes to ask questions, and I actually kind of prefer it that way. So I have a hard time following the text questions at the bottom while I'm trying to talk, I guess. So if people have a question that they want to pipe in with, go for it. Right. Try everything, right? Especially as a newcomer. There's so much you can do. There's so many things that you can try in the SCA that really give you a lot of room to explore, right? Just because you have a persona doesn't mean you have to stick to it. And I know a lot of people out there have multiple personas that they play with. Learning other cultures, learning other aspects of SCA life, like you might find something that you really enjoy. I didn't think I would enjoy voice heralding, but I tried it at a crown and it was kind of fun, right? It's a good motto. Because I couldn't fight at crown. So I was like, you know what, I can put myself to work and be a ring announcer, right? It was a lot of fun. And if you have any kind of skill, put them to use. And if you feel like you don't have any skills, you can always just build them up by trying different things and trying everything, right? And so just really quickly, some of the stuff that I've kind of made in the time that I've been in the SCA. I made a bunch of stabby things. So that's a hilt for a rapier that somebody asked if I could make. I hadn't worked with stainless steel up to this point. And I figured, why not, right? Give it a try. And so I copied a basket hilt that I saw, and we gave it a try, and it worked out pretty well. I think Nadeshda is actually fighting with that one on the island right now. Somebody wanted a rattan hilt, and so there's one big D-ring. I don't think Antonio actually uses it. He hasn't used it yet. I don't know. He might. We'll see. All right, but that was a lot of fun.
I haven't found gauntlets at work yet.
Oh, yes, blame the gauntlets. But yeah, that was fun to make, and it was a big learning curve. And I got better with my metalworking. It was a great challenge, definitely a great challenge. Somebody found out that since I have access to a machine shop, hey, I can make pommels for rapier. So I started making pommels for people. And that was fun, working on skills again, building those up, and getting better at what I do, right? It's a bit of a callback to last week's talk with Lord Tenoch. If you were there, it's like all your knowledge kind of builds and you become better at everything as you build that knowledge base, right? I did not make the blade, but somebody had ordered a bunch of blades and I was like, oh yeah, I could put a hilt on that, make a pommel for it. So it's brass and maple. It worked out pretty well. I like the look of it, right? This is probably the stabby thing that I'm most proud of. Somebody showed me the picture of the hilt that they liked, and I had no idea how to make this thing. They called it a lotus hilt, right? And it really tested every last bit of my fabrication and smithing skills, and a lot of fabricating, a lot of welding. I tried like 6 or 7 different ways of how to do this. And I kept staring at the pictures, kept trying to plan it out, kept trying to figure out how to do it. We wanted more hand protection when it was made, and so I had to modify a little bit. And I kept staring at the pictures, and one day I was like, man, that lighting is just so perfect. And then I realized it was a computer rendering I had been looking at the entire time. The thing didn't actually exist. I don't think it actually exists in real life. And so, yeah, I managed to make something that was somebody's imagination, which is really cool. And so I'm pretty proud of that, right? Of course, I also do armor repair, right? So that's Bryn's old helmet there. I don't know if you noticed. He left it in his bag, so it rusted for a while. That's something he does pretty regularly. But he also wanted more weight added to it. And I don't know if you can tell, but the right side of the helmet, a couple of spots caved in there because he needs to block that side a little better. And so we fixed it up. I hadn't done oil finishes at this point, but we got it fixed up, kept him fighting, and that was kind of cool. I got frick. You're awesome, Bryn. You're awesome. Other times, even if I'm not the one wearing the helmet or I'm not like doing anything with it, like the ability to practice skills really helps that knowledge base grow. This is a helmet for a newer fighter who sadly hasn't been back yet because of various life-related things. But one of the things I do with some of the new fighters is I tell them, hey, if you really want to keep fighting and you want to stop borrowing helmets, then come up to the shop and you put in sweat equity and we'll put a helmet together for you. So that's just an example of one of the helmets that we've made with that. I've also bartered. So I made a helmet for somebody and traded them for artwork. Bartering, super good. Trade your skills for things you can't do, right? I can't paint. I definitely can't paint. I can make armor. I can't paint. So being able to beautify the things that you have through the work of other people is really good. You go ahead and market those skills. Just put them to use, right? I'm pretty sure, I don't know if you can tell, but there's a hammer texture on the dome of this helmet, and I'm pretty sure that contributed to the tennis elbow in my right arm. But that's okay. You know what? Learning. All learning. All this time making helmets has definitely made me better at making helmets, I feel. It's not just a weird obsession. It's helpful for me because every time I feel like I put out a helmet, it does get better. And so that whole idea that your knowledge base grows as you practice your skills and continue to learn, even if it's a tangential thing, really does hold true. Tried a bunch of different things as well. Had a couple of pieces of ebony in the wood shop, and I'm like, I don't spend a lot of time in the wood shop, but I should always try to keep my skills up to date. And so one day I made a pair of ebony dice because I thought that was really cool. And lately I've been getting into jewelry casting, ring casting. And so somebody had given me this example. Oh, hey, could you make one of these? I was bored at the beginning of the pandemic. I was looking for things to do, things to make. And they're like, yeah, make that. And so not too long ago, I got it done. Which is really cool because there was a huge learning curve that I'll talk about later with that. It's a great practice, right? Especially trying to make things that match. I think my example ended up being a little thicker, but the weight was really nice. And I don't know, I'm pretty sure the person who has it really enjoys it. And then sometimes people just ask you to make things. So Baron William had asked me, hey, can you do a little something special? Oh, there's the question. Have you ever made casts for a chess period set? Neftaffel set. I don't know if you can tell, but that's our King Christian. That was a lot of fun because I made that out of wax and cast it in pewter. I don't think I'll cast the same way in pewter again. Yeah, you can see from the heraldry, right? Because Baron William wanted to give His Majesty a special gift on them stepping down. And so I made the king piece and a bunch of little pawn pieces. I don't even know how to play Neftaffel. I got to learn how to do that. Yeah, you can see the death stare for sure, right? But all these little things have contributed over time to just being able to build that skill set that I have. And it's been a great learning experience, right? Oh, tip 4, follow that rabbit hole. These rabbit holes are long and amazing because there's so many different ways to play this game, right? I think a lot of people get into the SCA and then they're like, well, how do I do this? You kind of follow your own path a lot of the time, right? What's interesting to you is going to be totally different to anybody else. And my time in the SCA is unique to me, right? It's your hobby, it's your time. You need to get that entertainment that you want out of that time. And so follow that rabbit hole wherever it goes. Because this was the beginning of my rabbit hole. Rabbit holes can turn into a house, quite literally. I bought this thing sight unseen. I can't remember where it was posted, but Oswald had found it. He's like, hey, we're sitting around talking about I don't know, what I wanted to do for a canvas tent, because I just happened to be at that point in my life where I could afford a canvas tent, and I just felt like having more space whenever I went to events. I like the idea of having my armor in my tent with me. I like the idea of having my kitchen in my tent with me. This is the first summer I had it, and what was that, 2016? Cato picked it up somewhere in the Okanagan and brought it to Newcomer, where we were having at war. It was that big one where they also had the jousters. They didn't cut the hay down that year. I didn't have a door at all. I scrounged a couple of pieces of plywood and kind of rigged something together that worked. And it was an empty gear with an air mattress on a tarp. And you can see my shield, I think, leaning against the gear walls there. For those of you who are unfamiliar with the term, ger is the Mongolian word for yurt. Yurt is a Turkic word, and lots of things can be described as yurts. But in Mongolia, they refer to it as a ger, which also means family, home, right? So much of their life revolves around the ger. And like I said, this was the beginning of my rabbit hole, and led me to a lot of awesome, awesome places. I wanted to make sure, again, drink, fight, and look good. I wanted to make sure that I was comfortable, right? I hate air mattresses, so it was time to make a bed. I built myself a slat bed, got some foamies, made it comfortable. It's huge. It's a double. I have so much room. Too much room, probably, right? I needed storage for all my kitchen stuff, so I made a storage box. I found out later in my travels that that color is a late introduction. I'll talk about that. I needed storage for my kitchen. I wanted to be able to move everything at once while also keeping it out in the open, while also making it relatively easy. And so I built this box instead of lugging everything around in a Rubbermaid bin. And the place looks awesome when you've got a fire on, and because the ger has the vent hole in the top, you just have a fire going all the time. I don't know if anybody remembers the sea line in Victoria where it was raining, and we had like 16 people packed into the ger because the fire was on and it was dry. But it's a great setup. I really enjoy it. But of course, nothing's ever well enough. I never leave it alone. I needed more furniture. And so this was the beginning of a storage chest that I had. I was learning to make better lines on my furniture. Right? You can see all this stuff on the bottom there. And of course, I cut a tablero board into the top of it. I think Kinrick remembers this board because that was the one I dragged out to Ontario West, and we were playing in the middle of the Eric party. And it's a big storage chest. It's great. I can move it around. It fits with the decor, fits with the color, and very, very useful, right? But of course, never leave well enough alone. I needed a new kitchen box because not all my kitchen stuff fit in the old one. And I wanted it to be a little lighter, or at least a little easier to carry. So this one actually splits in half. I have it painted now, but I've just used modern totes inside of it that slide in and out. It's easier to carry because it splits in half. It's not as heavy. It looks Mongolian on the outside, and it's modern and convenient on the inside, right? And of course, drink, fight, and look good. I have to make sure I look good when I'm fighting. So this is my current helmet. I just needed something that fit. The last one that I was wearing didn't have the hinge and cheek plates, and I was just, you know what, it's a convenience thing, right? I had to build myself armor, and so I spent a lot of time making plates. I know Oswald always laughs at me because he thinks that my students helped me build that. I got to tell you, 16-year-old kids, not so good on the quality control. So I ended up doing a lot of the pieces myself over again. But the effect is pretty good. I think it looks great. Funny thing is, of course, never leave well enough alone. I don't wear that armor anymore. Malice has it right now because I just found it too heavy, so I lightened up. Right, constantly evolving, I guess. But this is the thing, right? I got to this point, I was having a lot of fun, doing a lot of fighting, doing a lot of camping, and really enjoying myself. And the more I did research into working on my persona, the more I realized I know nothing. I know absolutely nothing. Because the world keeps growing around you every time you dig in and start looking at things. This is the Dunning-Kruger effect. If somebody were to go and search up things that looked Mongolian on the internet right around this time for me, I'd be at the very peak of Mount Stupid there, right there. Because everything I had looked Mongolian. It was great. Did I actually understand the culture though? Not really. I think I understood some of it tangentially through some of my Chinese upbringing, but it wasn't Mongolian culture, right? I looked the part and I could recall facts, and I had a ger, and if you Googled it and you walked in, you know, that kind of looks like a ger, right? Orange furniture, all that kind of stuff. It didn't look out of place, but I did not have a real feel for Mongolia. Like, I felt it was all superficial, and I wanted to make sure that I did it right by appreciating Mongolian culture and not just appropriating it. So I prepared to go to Mongolia for a summer. Again, that whole high school teacher thing makes it really easy to kind of be able to take off for the summer. There were a couple of things I needed to do before I did that, though. One was learn Mongolian. This is my Mongolian teacher, or as they say in Mongolian, Mini Baksh. Her name is Ochiko, and she was tough on me learning Mongolian. I was super lucky to be able to find her because there's a very small expat Mongolian community in BC. She just happened to be in British Columbia. She is, she got a political science degree and was a diplomat for a while. She's a published author. She does literary editing right now as a job. And she was so tough on me. It took me probably 2 weeks to learn how to properly pronounce the L sound in Mongolian as if. And it's really hard to do if you're not used to kind of making that sound. If. And I had to practice it like nonstop for 2 weeks. And if I was a little bit off, she would look at me and go, no, try that again. And it's funny because Ochiko is not actually how you pronounce her name. I've got it spelled there, O-C-H-I-K-O. How you actually pronounce it is Oshku, right? And she made her name easier for people to pronounce. And I remember reading something a couple of months ago about how we shouldn't be making it easier for people to pronounce your names because your name is part of your heritage, part of your culture. Again, call back to last week with Tenach and his talk. And so I tried my best to call her by her proper name all the time as much as I could. And so trying to, I'm guilty of it in the sense that I don't always correct people when they say my SCA name wrong. It's Nereügei, Nereügei, right? And I've kind of resisted telling people, well, that's not how it's pronounced. You know, here's the proper pronunciation. I don't know why. And I think a lot of it has to do with, you know, the factors of colonization and kind of the way the SCA is set up. And my whole existence, I guess, living through all my experiences here in Canada. But my name is Nereügei, and I'm going to stick with it. And I will help you learn to pronounce it. It's pretty easy. some of you might recognize Brianna, our Kingdom Equestrian Champion. She was also critical to my preparations to go into Mongolia because she helped me learn how to ride again. All the riding that I had done up to this point was trail rides, right? Just horses following horses because that's what they're kind of used to. I'm like, oh yeah, I'll be fine. Wait, no, maybe not. Maybe I should actually learn how to ride because I'm going to be in the middle of nowhere. So we managed to get 2 sessions in. That was it. It's like 2.5, 3 hours. And without those 2.5, 3 hours, I would not have been able to do half of what I did because I felt comfortable on a horse. So huge shout out to Brianna. Thank you so much for the time that you spent with me. It's amazing the impact that a place has on your understanding of a culture. Nothing prepares you for the wide open spaces in Mongolia. You know, like some of you might be from the prairies. Like we think we know what flattened featureless looks like, but a lot of that comes with roads. A lot of that comes with fences. There is none of that in Mongolia. It is just wide open spaces. And it's amazing how wide open those spaces are. You can drive for hours, ride for hours, walk for hours. It's just empty. At least it feels that way. Every so often there's a dot on the horizon somewhere that's family's gear because they have their animals out there. None of the gears have roads going to them. There's just tons of sheep and goats and horses running wild and cattle. And every so often you see one of two things, either the power poles going from one community to another, or you end up seeing ovos, which are piles of rock. They have a spiritual meaning. It's a marker for where the spirits are strong. This ovo, for instance, is way out east, and I think the hill that it was on was maybe 3 or 4 meters tall. Like it was not tall at all, but it was the highest feature for miles around, and so they put an ovo on top of it. I was just lucky enough to catch this one at sunset. Is it true that you could be invited into a ger if you're not from there? Absolutely, yeah. There's a real culture of helping each other out in Mongolia, hospitality to strangers. It's, is that better? Sorry. Okay. Oh, Ovo. It would be OVOO. That would be our translation for it. You can pretty much show up anywhere at any ger at any time, and the people will invite you in. You say, hey, how you doing? Is your family healthy? Is your herd healthy? Are the pastures good? Then you can head in and talk about what's going on. It's okay. I'll hold it if it makes it easier. And they'll be hospitable to you. Food, drink, you name it. A little bit of a rest. You can stay the night, and off you go whenever you need to go. It's pretty cool. You find ovos in mountain passes, all sorts of different places, right? And people will stop wherever they can when there's a ger, just really sometimes just to say hi. The only thing you kind of need to do is make sure that they don't have their dogs coming after you. And so the word there is normally nohoihoro, which means hold the dogs. To return the hospitality, oftentimes people have little gifts. Yeah, bring something to them. It's kind of frowned upon to bring money because it's not thoughtful. It's not one of those gifts that you can actually use right away. And so a lot of the things that I brought with me were, yeah, sometimes vodka. I brought coloring books for the kids and pencil crayons. I brought coffee from Canada, of all things. Whole bunch of little gifts here and there that I could just kind of like pass along. And thanks for letting me drop in and say hi, right? Everywhere you go, there's a reminder that you're also walking through history, right? That impact, it was really subtle at first. because you're like, oh yeah, okay, I'm just kind of like going through the countryside. But everywhere you look, there's examples that people have been there before, and that they're stewards of the land, and that they are taking care of that land for the future as well. It was this picture here. I just kind of happened upon a group of tourists of all people, and there were a couple of people from Canada, from Montreal, who were in the group, and I just kind of tagged along with them for a couple of days. They rode horses, they explored the land. I kind of tooted around on my motorcycle for a bit, and then came up to meet them at night just to hang out. And so I could also camp with people. It was kind of feeling a little lonely at that point. But, you know, like you can just say hi to people, I guess, because everybody's going through the landscape in their own kind of a way, whether it's tour groups or people that you just kind of walk in, run into on your way there. This is way out west in Bayanowski. I went mountain climbing, of all things, right? And everything you do, everywhere you look, it feels like this is the way they've been doing things for centuries. I love that picture, right? Yeah, camels. How did I decide where to go? I kind of wanted to see as much of the country as possible, and there are a bunch of distinct ethnicities within Mongolia. So out west, most of the people are ethnically Kazakh. Up north, they are very nomadic, and it's the last of the reindeer hunters, or sorry, the reindeer herders, which is where I am here. They stay in teepees, move every season, move 4 times a year at least. Yeah, it's super neat. All the paths that we walked on, rode on, drove along, they all felt centuries old. Like everything had a purpose, right? Moving from one valley to the next, moving from one wintering spot over to another. It was just super cool. Connecting the reasons why things were done a certain way in Mongolian culture and why certain things were important. I stayed with an eagle hunter actually while I was there. It wasn't hunting season yet because it was still in the middle of summer. I've got a picture somewhere coming up, I think. And everywhere you looked, like even though the land had been in use, there's always reminders of older and older things that were there. Sorry, I totally missed your question there, Bryn. I'll maybe get you to ask that later so I can keep rolling here. These are earthen walls from about 200 BCE, from one of the previous empires that had populated the land there. Here are some burial practices from about 500 BCE, Turkic peoples. You could visit landmarks from the time of Genghis Khan, right? This is Blue Lake, where he was crowned Genghis Khan in 12 something, early 1208. I don't remember. But to be there and be like, oh yeah, you know, they had a Kurultai here, and that's where they elected and chose him and recognized him to be Genghis Khan. It's really cool. Buddhist monasteries from the 1600s. There aren't very many left. The Soviets had come in and destroyed a lot in the mid-30s, unfortunately. But this is the one that they left standing on purpose. Again, you know, being stewards of the land, always that reminder that there were people there before you. It makes you really ponder your place in the world and how you can help make it better. Lots of cultural sites as well. So these are, again, some of those Turkic stones that you can find out west, out north. Just super cool watching the forces of history evolve over top of this open, barren landscape, right? You have shamanic sites like this one. This is a rebuilding of a traditional shamanic circle around a sacred tree. They had sites, lots of sites, every site, venerating and remembering Genghis Khan. Do they have directional markers? No. People just kind of know I'll talk about that later on, actually, when I'm talking about some of the people that I met. Right, lots of Buddhist sites. This one here, I don't know if you can see it, but on the sign itself, there is Sanskrit, there's Chinese, there is the old Mongolian Uyghur script. This was from the palace of the last Khan of Mongolia, and he was, I think he died in 1910 or 1915, somewhere around there. And so you can see the huge influence of different cultures that have kind of washed over the land over the last few centuries. And it wasn't until I showed up in Mongolia where I started actually understanding why things look the way they do whenever we see pictures of Mongolia, right? And coming back to talking about the color orange, a lot of those colors, they are sacred to Mongolians, but a lot of the influences for the art that you see are all Buddhist influences from about 1550 onwards, right? And so for us, very late period, but that's what's evolved in the modern Mongolian aesthetic. It's neat because a lot of the older color palettes have been lost. Like I don't think I really had a sense of what a truly non-Mongolian color palette for a Gare would be, unless I looked at examples from the Kazakh Gares, which were unpainted mostly. You'll see interior shots of one of those sometime along the show here, right? But it was just such a great impact to be able to actually see the things as they were in real time, in real place, right? And actually experience them that way instead of out of a book or out of a museum over here, right? It's a huge privilege for me to be able to say that, to be able to have the time to be able to go travel, because nobody ain't traveling right now. But it was just so eye-opening to be able to have that happen, right? Lots of other important cultural touchstones that weren't just historical too. This is a town square in Chodosan, in kind of central eastern Mongolia, and all these statues are monuments to all the wrestlers that they've had who were provincial champions, right? Or noted wrestlers in the past. Wrestling was huge. I do not regret blowing my knee out to give that an experience, right? It was, I don't know, every boy wrestles. And I say boy because wrestling is not open to women in Mongolia. But every boy wrestles, every boy dreams of being wrestling champion. I remember being at one of the summer festivals in Bayanolsky out west, where the Kazakhs are the majority, and the last two wrestlers of the day, one was Kazakh, the other was Mongolian, and everybody was screaming one name or the other, and there was just so much energy, and it was so built into the identity of who they were. Puzzles. These are just some of the really basic wooden puzzles that were in a museum. And I guess when you have really long winters, people love their puzzles, right? Yeah, that would make great largesse, actually. As a true boys have to fight topless girl due to winning long ago. Yeah, I believe that is the mythology. The capital city is pronounced Ulaanbaatar. I don't think I say it properly still. I think rolling the R is kind of hard for me. There was a whole museum dedicated to puzzles like this, right? They love chess, they love checkers, they love anything that's intellectual and competitive, which is awesome. A lot of felting, the little felt horse. It's a little bit out of focus right now, but I guess some of the locals had found out that obviously, tourists with money were coming, and so hey, take a look at some of our felted wares, and they're really cool. Like, they have so much of that built in their history. There's like everything, tea cozies, placemats, everything made of felt, because there's just so much of it. if I were better at working with textiles, I might even consider it. Somebody has suggested I should actually properly felt wall my gear. That's a big project. We'll see how that goes. And for whatever reason, Mongolians love, oh, this is from the bow shop that I went to go visit. It was one of the last traditional bow making shops out there. So that's ibex horn, hoof glue, cow hoof glue. That stuff stank. It smelled terrible. All right. Here's some more textile stuff. I pretty much tried to go to every museum that I could find. I went to the National Museum. I went to the provincial museums of every province that I hit. I went to the Dinosaur Museum, Buddhist Art Museum, again, the Game Museum, right? This quilting is Kazakh. They had one of the people who were selling it, she's also a master's student in traditional Kazakh embroidery. And so she's got a huge catalog of designs, and you can trace the designs going through time and how they were used. I was there for 2 months, friend, like exactly 60 days. And of course, bad taxidermy. I don't know what it is. Mongolians love their horrible taxidermy. I think that's a bobcat. I don't know. I love the way he smiles. Such bad taxidermy, right? And like the bear is just hideous. The eyes, just not right. Just not right. The wolf's jaw, lower jaw is all askew. I love these pictures. Oh man, some of these are just so bad. There's a cat. I think it's a snow leopard they were trying to do. Oh man, like they're just, I think this one here is Vlad's favorite picture. I don't even know what it is. Just horrible. But another part of the culture that you get to experience when I was there is the special relationship that they have with animals. Animals are so important in Mongolian life, right? They're a symbol of your prosperity, but also they're crucial to your survival. They are used for dairy products. Obviously, they're shaved for their wool. They are branded to show ownership, which I got a chance to help with. Right? There's Arbalete shaving the wool off the sheep because it was summer and this thing was shaggy. Right? That's me helping brand the young goats and sheep. I was just standing there watching. Yeah, to be fair, taxidermy is very hard. It's very true. I just don't understand why there's so much bad taxidermy in Mongolia. I was watching Arbalete and his family and the neighboring family branding, because it was branding day when we arrived. And grandma was in there, and grandma was, 70 something, 80 years old. And I'm standing there, I'm going, if she can do this, I can help. I might as well hop in and help. And so I learned how to hold goats and sheep down while they got branded. Every family has their own special brand, right? And so Arbalete's family was 2 stripes across the nose. Others had circles with a line or whatever it may be. And I just recently found out that they're called tamka, which is a style of heraldry that families would have all across the steppes, all the way into Poland, apparently. So it was super cool. I don't know if I'll be able to make something like that happen for actual heraldry in the SCA, but I don't know. I might not have time right now at this very moment. I don't know. Animals are also used as pack animals, obviously, and you ride pretty much everything. That's me riding a reindeer. That is a standard mode of transportation with the Totten people. Very rare. They only live up in the far north, and they don't eat them. They just rear them for milk and milk products, right? And ride them whenever they need transportation. I didn't see, how did it compare? Oh, to Zori? Oh man, riding a reindeer is so strange. They're really jerky when they start, but then their feet kind of move really quickly, like they're shuffling. And it kind of feels like you're riding a cloud. It's so strange. It's the strangest feeling. There's no galloping. There's no loping that horses would have, right? I didn't see Mongolians cruel with their animals, ever. They respected them, but they were definitely work animals. They weren't pets. Not like we take care of our horses here. Like, they work their horses. And that might be shocking for people from North America or Europe heading over to interact with animals, right? For them, totally normal. For us, well, haven't seen that before, right? But the one animal above all that Mongolians prize would be their horses. I think this was within my first week of showing up. I was stopped because I just needed to take a break, and there's some cool looking land formations, which are super cool to me. I've got a geography degree, so geological formations, stuff like that are always super interesting. And these two horsemen rode up. We said hi, we swapped some cigarettes and vodka, and I gave them some gifts, but they wanted to have me take my picture with them and their horses, right? Because they are so proud of their horses. There are songs from medieval times celebrating famous horses. And so, yeah, they definitely love their horses. Again, they're work animals, right? But they were pretty well taken care of still. The word for horseman is actually different in Mongolian than it is for any other shepherd. All shepherds are called malchin, which means pretty much animal worker. But horsemen are called aduchin. That's the only difference there, right? This picture is from the big horse race outside of Ulaanbaatar for their summer game. Like, this is the one of the premier events. I think there are probably 250,000 people in this field, and kids under the age of 10 would ride 26 kilometers, 30 kilometers on 1-year-old, 2-year-old horses, and they would just go and they would come back. And it was a huge thing because I guess everybody rides, right? You can see the one guy standing up on his saddle in order to get a better view. And it was just, I don't know, there's a whole culture of reverence around the horse and what horses symbolize, right? And they're all semi-feral. None of them are actually like domesticated horses. They don't really want to listen to you, but if you corral them and lasso them and put them to work, they'll just work until it's time for them to stop working when you're done with them, right? Corralling horses is a thing. It is intense because we all know that these horses can kill us by running over us. They don't know that. It's a lot of trickery involved. Terrifying, absolutely terrifying. This is also one of the few, the only time that men will participate in milking an animal, and it's with horses because it's super important to make the booze out of it. There's a very distinct gender separation of the duties of the household. The men will often go herd early in the morning, come back, go out in the evening, come back, and the women take care of a lot of pretty much everything else, right? Very stark. I got really dirty looks when I tried to do the dishes, for instance, because that wasn't my job. A little different, but so it goes. Having like traditional meals too. Washku always said that the sheep in Canada never tasted right, like the mutton never tasted right. We dock their tails here, for instance, but back in Mongolia, they let the tails grow, and that's a huge part of the meal because people will slice the fat from the tail and put it into meals, right? This was actually one of my favorite meals. It was a long day on the motorcycle, and all this is rice broth with little pieces of goat meat and goat ribs. The family was like, well, this is what we got. I'm like, this is amazing. this is perfect. And they made sure I understood the etiquette of how to use a knife and all that. And we talked a lot. I had Google Translate out a lot, even after taking 4 months of language classes. I had Google Translate out so I could try to pick words up and be able to communicate. But it was pretty cool. Very rarely, again, they don't use the reindeer for meat, but sometimes they have reindeer meat. I just wanted to try it. It was really important that I did not go up north to the reindeer herders and use their resources. I actually ended up buying a bunch of supplies. Yeah, there are a few different dialects for sure of Mongolian. They're not huge differences, but little words here and there are different. But Kazakh is totally different, right? Anyways, yeah, so I brought a bunch of supplies with me because, you bring gifts. And I stayed with them for about a week and a half maybe. And they really kind of brought me into their family. It was really, really cool. Liver and pickles, I think. I don't remember when I had this meal. But there's a lot of Russian influence, obviously, now to the modern meals, but they will, Mongolians won't put anything to waste, right? And so eat the liver, eat the offal. They'll take all the blood and stuff it into the intestines and make sausage. Stuff's delicious. It's just fabulous. It was more than once that somebody had just slaughtered a sheep, and I got to partake in the feast, right? People did want to practice their English with me, absolutely. And I was more than happy to help, right? Did I go alone and we're on your own through all these? Not through all of them. And so for a couple of weeks, I was practically alone. I know when I was up north, I was the only English speaker for, like 100 miles around me. Even the days where I was alone, I don't think I really felt alone because I knew that there were people kind of over the ridge. I don't know, it was weird. It was liberating in a way because you could kind of like disappear up a valley that had no road going up to it and just kind of stay the night. And people, they wanted to would come and check in on you, and you'd talk, and then they'd go off and you'd spend the night. It was never a case where I actually felt like truly alone. This is one of the Kazakh meals. They call it a 5-finger feast. And so you take so the propane stove, when we were trekking, we were actually nowhere near somewhere where they could set up and have fires to build on a regular basis. I remember like running into where we're going on a single track path through the mountains, and people were bringing firewood back over the other side where we just can't come from. Like stuff like that is hard to find, and so it's sometimes a lot easier, especially with organized small groups, to just bring a propane stove with you. But what Janka is cooking on in the foreground is the traditional stove that you find in Algiers, which is essentially a box stove with a circle cut out on the top where a giant round bowl of a cooking vessel sits in. And most of the time they're dung fires too. And that's definitely something that reminds me of Mongolia. I might start going to farms and seeing if I can find cow patties just to dry them so I can have that smell again, because it's something totally different. It's so communal food, and I think in Mongolia it's even, there's a level of intimacy with it, right? Because we have our hands in cow dung. We have our hands right in the food, and we're cutting meat off the bone and handing it to people sitting around you. It's just so cool. It's so different. Very communal, very intimate. But dairy products are such a huge staple in Mongolian life. This is very typical of how they would dry their, when I had short hair, I don't remember that. Did I ever have trouble entering a group of people? No, not at all. I think part of it is the fact that I look, well, not white, I guess, right? It was a very different experience going somewhere where I looked like everybody else, but didn't share the culture. And so being able to speak the 3 or 4 words to kind of open up the conversation, right? I'd be like, Samano, and they'd be like, Samano, blah, 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 blah. And I'd be like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Be Julchin, be Mongolian, Pagdin, which means I'm a tourist, I know very little Mongolian. And we would work from there. But the drying table outside, where they would dry their cheese curds, that you would have with tea, clotted cream. As a white person, you could totally travel, but it's different, right? Like when a white person travels anywhere in the world, it's like, oh, hey, like this person's a tourist. My first, people didn't give me a second look at all. There was no way to tell that I was a tourist in Mongolia. I didn't dress, well, I didn't carry things like a giant camera around, so that made it really hard to pick out the fact that I was a tourist, I guess. This here is the bag of areg, which is the fermented mare's milk that is so famous. And it's usually just sitting on the inside, left side of the door. You walk in and it's got the ladle in it, and you kind of stir it a couple of times because it needs to be aerated. How does it taste? Oh man, it tastes like sour yogurt when you have a small little sip. The most important thing that you brought back with me, not just for the SCA. Oh, I don't know if things really mattered. I have friends in Mongolia now. I've been keeping track of a couple of them. They've been hit pretty hard, obviously, with the downturn in tourism. So it's just, seeing what it is that I can do to help them, which really isn't much. But if I had to pick a thing, oh man, that's a good one. I'll come back to that one. Anyway, that's what it looks like inside of the areg bag. That's the cream on top. It tastes like sour yogurt. Yeah. And that first sip is just like, oh God, how do you drink this? But I was told, don't sip it, just gulp it. It is not canvas. It is a horse hide flipped inside out. I guess over the years it cures or whatever it may be. Right? So yeah, you're constantly picking horsehair out of your areg drink as well. But if you gulp it, it goes down a lot smoother. If you have more than like 2 bottles of it, it's a really good laxative. And I was told, don't do that. Here's an example of the cheese that they would make. They have little wooden molds with the shape, obviously, and the writing symbols on the mold, and they would press their cheese curds in and flip them out and dry them. This is reindeer cheese, which is really hard to come by. And it's always, this is the thing, right? If you have a bunch of different purpose of the playing cards. Oh, they're playing cards. People are just having fun. Long winters, right? Every province, every city, every little town, every family obviously thinks they make the best cheese products. And so being able to take different cheeses with you to share so that people could try it was huge, right? And the family that I had stayed with was gracious and generous enough to give me a piece of the reindeer cheese to bring back and share with people. It was salty and smooth. This was really fresh. It hadn't dried yet. Once it dries, that stuff it's like a jawbreaker. It's so hard. You usually want to dip it in your tea for a little while before you nibble a little off. And then as Oswell so elegantly puts it, it tastes like you're licking a horse. But I like the taste now. I still have a little bit of it left. Don't tell anybody. Milk is just such a huge part of their culture. This is out west again. That's Arbalet's kid, and he's just dipping the pan onto the top of the milk that they're boiling in the cauldron so he can lick the cream off the top. I don't know. I just loved that. He was sitting there for hours doing it, and I don't know. Didn't think twice about it. Other people were gonna have to drink that milk too. Whatever. It's all good. That real connection to the history and the culture and the land, though, I don't know. He let it cool down on the pan. I guess the pan would cool it down for him. Then he'd bring it up and lick it. He enjoyed it. Such great hair, right? I don't remember when my hair was short. That real connection to the history and the culture and the land, how they would tell you, how you would learn about the land with the people. So this was one of my drivers, Elham, like just unparalleled knowledge of the road. I remember he was driving in the dead of night from the city that I had landed in, and we were driving till like 3 a.m. over some just the most ridiculous mountain passes, because on the way back, I saw them during the day, and I was like, how did you navigate this at night? This is incredible, right? No signs, no signposts, no nothing. And they just remember from years of practice, from years of travel, from stopping and talking to people, which we did a lot out east because we had a hard time finding some of the things that we were looking for, to be able to talk about their traditions, to learn about their traditions. This is Arbalet. He and I became pretty good friends because when we got back, he had lost a couple of his camels. They just wandered off. And camels are really expensive in Mongolia. I think they're roughly like 15,000 Canadian each, but at $100 a month, that's a lot of months to kind of save up for a camel. And so he was pretty distraught. And I remember at this point, my knee was, this was before I blew it out. I was having tendon issues with my kneecap on my right knee. I'm like, oh, I don't feel like riding out to this waterfall to go sightseeing. And so, yeah, they do release them at a certain age and then start retraining them. So this one was a 2-year-old eagle that Arbalet was going to go hunting with for the first time that winter. Anyways, the 2 people I was traveling with went off riding and sightseeing, and Arbalet and I hopped on his motorcycle and went camel searching. We spent all day looking for these 2 camels because he was worried that they would try to swim across the lake that was there and drown, because apparently Mongolians say that all camels kind of know where home is, kind of like salmon, I guess. And so he was afraid that these camels would go home. And so we spent probably 6 hours looking for these camels, and I managed to spot them. I am very proud of that because I like smacked him on his shoulder and I'm like, Time, saying camel over there. And we stopped and he was super happy. We checked like dozens of camel herds out there looking for his branded camels. And yeah, that was a good day. There was a lot of vodka that night. He was very happy. I was also lucky enough to be invited to a wedding while I was up north with the reindeer herders. That was something else. I don't think I'd ever had that much vodka before noon, ever. I kind of woke up that day and Flatfire was like, hey, let's go. I'm like, where are we going? He says, we're going to a wedding. I'm like, I don't have any gifts. He's like, it's okay, just come hang out. And so lots of food, lots of singing, lots of drinking, lots of laughing. It was super neat to be able to go through that experience with them and just see what's important, right? To be able to just be a bystander and absorb all this was just so eye-opening. Super neat. That's Batfire and his wife Bolamar and Gile, their daughter. She's so cool, just super cool. No gender division in the singing. Everybody sang. Yeah, that's Usko, who's my guide from the furthest northern village in Mongolia. Like I got there after a 12-hour van ride, and the next day was a 9-hour horse ride out to literally nowhere. It was hell. It was hard. Did anyone do throat singing? Yep. It's hard to do. There aren't a ton of practitioners. I did not learn how to do throat singing. I don't know if I have enough time to practice. It takes years to get good at it. I am, Brianna, I'm doubling somebody on a horse here without a helmet on. Sorry. It was the only way to get to the wedding, because Usko's horse, he lent out to somebody else to make it easier for them to get home, right? So we doubled up. That was a really good story. I know you noticed. Thank you. Just everybody that you meet, it's just really cool. There's a lot of challenges to traditional knowledge these days. Gile and her brother Senna, from the reindeer herders, they go to school in the village, right? And so they do that commute once at the beginning, and then they stay with their grandparents throughout the school year, and then go back in the summer. People go to Ulaanbaatar for post-secondary, right? Usko's in Ulaanbaatar right now. I actually brought traditional clothing from Vancouver back with me, as odd as that sounds. The hospitality truly is as deep as it is coming across. Yes, absolutely it is. But I hesitate to say that if you bring a crappy attitude, you won't get that same level of hospitality. But like, your mileage varies depending on how you treat people, right? I had somebody in Mongolia make me one of their traditional empire period deals, which is the robe, and it was shipped out here, and I wore it for a little bit, and I decided to tack it up in my luggage and bring it back with me so I could wear it there. So that yellow one that you saw me wearing in that picture with Arbalete and the eagle, that's my deal. I did bring back a more modern one, which is a nice blue one, but different time period, different influences. Yeah, I don't know. Who wants to go back to a nomadic life after leaving and living in the city? It's a tough life. And it's a hard sell. And as time has gone on, excuse me, Ulaanbaatar's got half of the population of the country within its city boundaries, and it's growing every year. Not everybody wants to live a nomadic lifestyle anymore, and it's really hard to keep that tradition going. Right, but they do try. There's definitely a lot of resurgence of Mongolian culture, a recognition that it needs to be preserved in the face of all the changes in the modern world, right? And they are very happy to have tourists come and experience that with them. So that's really cool. Yeah, they're definitely trying to keep it alive for the future, much like the way the land is cared for, the culture is cared for as well, right? I can't imagine any time in the future where they're going to stop arguing about who's got the better cheese, for instance. So, yeah. But I think part of the theme here with this talk is, you're going to fail, and you get better as your knowledge kind of grows, right? Going to Mongolia, I don't know what I expected, but I think I got exactly what I needed when I was there. I definitely plan on going back whenever that's possible. Maybe I'll teach English there for a year or two. I don't know. It seems like kind of fun, right? But this is the big thing about bringing it back to the SEA and ANS. Like, you're going to fail, especially as a maker, as a craftsperson. I screw things up all the time, right? So one of the first things I did when I came back from Mongolia is I decided I needed to rebuild my khan, which is the wall segments for my ger. I had the original one that I got, which is a big, giant rollout baby gate, essentially. And having seen how they were made in Mongolia, I decided, you know what, I want more proper wall segments. And so I started making pieces. I have access to a wood shop. I am extremely lucky in that sense. And so I started cutting these wall slats and started lacing them together. Originally, I was going to use paracord, so I bought a bunch of paracord already in preparation for this before I had gone to Mongolia. And I started lacing them together, and lo and behold, when I tried to open them up so I could curve them around, they bowed out at the top, kind of like a rack of lamb, I guess, does when you put them together, because the straight pieces don't curve properly. And I was like, what is going on, right? Did I learn a trade there? No, I did not. I did not have enough time to visit as many workshops as I wanted to. I think I was too busy visiting all the museums. Much of the things that I do, it's just me trying to keep my skills fresh as a teacher, actually. I couldn't figure out what I'd done wrong until I remembered having seen some of the wall segments in Mongolia when they were closed up. They had a bit of a bow to them. And so I was like, oh, I need to curve these things. And so I built a little jig, started curving the pieces. That took forever because I could only do so many at a time. Got them curved up. I learned how to tie the proper knots. Thanks to Sunjin, she sent a video. She had a video posted that was showing how these knots were tied. And then I went back and looked at all my photos that I had and realized, oh yeah, that's exactly how they do it. Okay, so I had to learn how to do that. And then eventually I managed to make a curving wall section where the tops of the walls don't curve outwards. I was super excited. But of course, if I'm going to make new wall segments, I should make a new ring. And this is one of the things I definitely paid attention to, because I know that the ring that I had, the ton that I had for my existing gear was kind of scraped together and it wasn't great. And so I started cutting pieces out, figuring out how to assemble them, referring back to pictures that I'd seen when I was there to learn how to make these, and assembled it. I realized, hey, I might as well have those center pillars while I was at it too, because they're really important within the mythology of the gear itself. Yeah, it totally does look like one of those wooden puzzles. And it was a chance again to work on my carpentry skills, right? And this was probably the single most important thing. I could never have figured out how the top of the door held the different poles in place without having been to Mongolia. And here they are. I don't think I've ever seen it in a book or anything, right? And so my rafter poles would just stick out past the door, and so you'd have to duck extra low. And Liam would hit his head on those things all the time because he's 6'3" and I'm not. I can duck through my door a lot easier than he can. So now he's not going to smash his head on my gear every time he comes in, right? And it looked pretty good. Like, I did a tester. I was going camping this summer, good old 2020. I did a tester to make sure everything fit, and everything fit. It all curves. Like the walls aren't curving outwards at the top. It looked great, right? Super happy with it, right? Really pretty when it's all set up with the canvas on it and everything. And I still need to fix it because I didn't get the rafter lengths correct. And so the two center poles are actually floating in this picture. They're supposed to be supporting the center ring. They're like 3 inches off the ground. The ground wasn't perfectly level and didn't work so great, which is fine. You know, minor thing. I had to go back and recalculate all the rafters, but I can deal with that later. I can't see myself camping anytime soon, unfortunately, right? Telescoping ones, yeah. This is my latest failure. This one sucked because I had a few pieces on there. I was learning how to do silver casting. And I had just gotten a piece of equipment. I'd been doing spin casting, centrifugal spin casting for a little while, and they were pretty successful, but my school managed to get me a vacuum caster, knowing that with vacuum casting, you get great detail. And I was so excited. And I set these rings up and melted the wax out, popped one in, and yeah, well, very, very good point. Nobody learns everything from one go. I thought I had it figured out. I've learned to be kinder to myself in my years of teaching at this point. I remember being really hard on myself when I first started. But this was tough because a lot of students' work in there that was lost, right? And so I felt like I'd really let them down. But like all good people, kind of pick yourself up, readjust, figure out what went wrong. A little sleuthing to figure out what exactly went wrong. Ulf was really kind, and he got me in touch with Torfin, who kind of talked me through, asked me a bunch of questions, said, well, it's probably this. And I don't know if anybody knows Kate Morrow, but she was kind enough to trade me a small furnace, because we figured it was actually the heat of the flask that was the problem. She traded me her large one for my small one. And so I had the right equipment to work with, right? So it was time to try again. And so I've always wanted to do more thumb draw archery. So I started working on a thumb ring. Most of the thumb rings from Mongolia are just pieces of leather. You get examples of Turkic ones that are this shape. Sometimes they'll make them out of bone, and they're similar to this shape. Mughal India had thumb rings that were really, really ornate, because at that point they were symbols of status, right? But it was time to give this a proper go, and so I took some inspiration from some silver work that was done in the Golden Horde. Yeah, exactly. They were even jeweled, right? Definitely status symbols, less functional. I decided to try doing some carving in some traditional motifs and set it up on the sprue. Looked pretty good. And this was the first thing I was putting in after getting the new furnace. Wanted to make sure if I was going to ruin anything, it wasn't going to be the kids' work. It was going to be my work, right? And it came out. Right? We managed to solve that problem, and it looks pretty good. I'm pretty happy with it. I'm wearing it right now, actually. I don't know if you can quite see it. I remember the first one I made one prior to this. I actually brought it with me down in 12th Night. Didn't cast it out of silver. I made it out of beeswax, and this whole trying things over and over again until you're getting it right. I have it here. You can see that. I managed to stick some cubic zirconias in it just for fun, because I figured, why not, right? Give it a try. There we go. That thing, I met Torkil for the first time, and he's like, oh, hey, did you make that? I'm like, yeah, I made it. It was my first one. He's like, oh, that's nice. You keep working at it. And he was really kind to me, because this thing is huge compared to my other one, right? Like, just huge, massive, way oversized. If I put it on my thumb, it just falls off. It doesn't fit properly at all. And so it was super nice to have somebody who knew what they were doing, who knew what they were looking at, be kind to me on that first go and just encourage me to keep going, right? Because people new to the SCA trying to do A&S, it's tough when you feel like everything that you do, everything that you make is going to be judged in some way, right? So, yeah. Really, what it comes down to, it's a game. Have fun. We just have to have fun, right? In terms of my future projects, I'm making a new helmet, go figure, right? But I also just finished my name research. It just came through the letters of acceptance and return. And so now I officially have Nereügei as an SCA name, researched and all. And it's a little step towards decolonization, right? To be able to open up that style of name. That's a relatively unique style. Nereügei in Mongolian actually means no name. Bryony and Oswald and Jenny, I don't remember Jenny's SCA name. They were sitting around at the pub after a practice one day, and they kept looking up names for me, and they gave me no name as a name because they figured it'd be fun. And if it got to the point where it's like, I might as well just hang on to this. I might as well just try to find proper documentation for it. And so it was a bit of a challenge for sure. But now that it's oh yeah, Juliana, that's right. But now that it's okayed, that means that people in Turkic, Mongolian cultures can have an easier time researching names that are negative in connotation because they're used as protective names. So names like no name or not this one or bad dog. I'm waiting for the day somebody registers bad dog as a name. Muinochoi, that's what it is, right? Great name. I think it's a great name. But yeah, little things like that. And really just continuing to work on my persona, right? Dog soldier, yeah, right? Really just working on my persona. I really find that it's not one of those things, for me at least, that you kind of do a flurry of research and then you just kind of sit on it, and that's who you are in this game for the rest of your time in this game. That continued incremental growth, a little bit at a time, is just it's rewarding because even if you're not able to go to the place where your persona is from, that little bit of research kind of brings you closer to that, and it makes it super interesting, right? Becomes a continuum as opposed to just an endpoint, right? I find it really interesting trying to fight into ANS in the SCA, right? Visiting in France. Trying to fight and do ANS at the same time. Like, I want to try to become a high-level-ish fighter. I think I use high-level very, very loosely here. But to be able to kind of do both at the same time is really challenging to do when you're trying to juggle your timelines at events and whatnot. And I think for me at least, I'm a bit of an enabler. I like helping people kind of make things happen. So some of you might be following Rose in her Elizabethan linen jacket. She came up to the shop so she could make her own drop spindle, so she could make linen thread, right? Little things like that. Her flax break, her scudding board, if that's what it's called, right? I kind of like helping people make stuff, and that interconnection when we're kind of all striving to do different ANS things. That's what kind of keeps us together. It's fun, and it again builds your knowledge base and increases your skill at things, and it's a chance to give back. So anyways, that's the end of my talk, but I'm so happy to answer questions for people, talk about things like how we can help not just newcomers to the SCA, but also people who want to develop persona, how to help them. I think it's really important in order to kind of grow the SCA and make it stronger as a whole. Yeah, so please feel free to unmute and have a chat. Let me
Their Excellencies have some words.
Yeah, I would really like to thank Nereügei for his wonderful talk. I have a few things to say about this gentle. That he first received his award of arms and his Étoile d'Argent in 2017, which is not that long ago, followed by a Red Flame in 2018. For those who don't know, the Red Flame is our Thierry Award for persona development, encampment, clothing, and general excellence in encouraging the image of medievalism within the Principality, which I think he embodies. After seeing this, I'm sure you can all see why and agree with me. Nereügei is a valued member of the barony. He is generous with his time and his metal shop, as you also may have noticed. And he has helped many fix or create pieces for camping gear as well as ANS research. We are pleased he agreed to join us tonight and share his thoughts and experiences on his journey. Lastly, once camping is back on and you can see his gear without its doors or with its doors open, all you need to do is loudly state "No hoi haro" and walk in for tea. So now we have lots of time to ask him questions. Unmute all your mics if you want to chat, and let's have a little impromptu party. And we all want to say thank you to Nereügei.
Thank you.
Nereügei.
You're all so welcome.
Thank you, Nereügei.
Nereügei?
Nereügei, I have a question.
Yes.
I've been out of the SCA since about November 2013 after being hit while flagging. How do I re-enter the SCA and develop my persona more from there?
You got to remember why you were in the SEA in the first place, I feel. Right?
For fun, for learning.
Yeah, go find your friends. Go find new friends. Find people with a similar interest in what you have and just start sharing projects, start trading stories. I'm no expert. I mean, I kind of just stick my nose into everything a little bit here and there. But sometimes at the same time, I need a little bit of prodding. I remember being at TOA and Sir Olin was like, hey, you should go, just take a couple of minutes and go stand guard. And that transformed into me, transformed into Saverick being gracious enough to have me on his guard for a good chunk of time when he was king. And that was a way to connect with a bunch of people that I'd never had a chance to connect with before. So
That is an insightful way.
yeah, just I can't tell you the way, but definitely go back to what you find fun and just go and have fun.
Well, I was actually going to come back in 2020, but we all know what happened there. But what you see me wearing is what took me half a year to make from a straight piece of cloth. I hand cut, no pattern, hand sewed and hand dyed, period, a kirtle and a ceremonial surcoat.
Cool.
So
That's so cool.
I do not know what I'm doing anymore, but I learned I was also a human serger. I didn't know how to do that, but yeah.
I have a thought. So in 2013, I came back to the SCA. 2013, 2014. Anyways, somewhere in and around there. And a year or two later, I was finally got my AOA. And I thought, well,
Congrats, huzzah!
what am I supposed to do with this? Because of course the instructions with that is to go consult with the heralds and to create an appropriate set of arms. And it got me thinking, well, why? Why do we pick this time, this place, this name, why do we do that? And it just started with me to be a series of very curious questions. So why did I pick Ireland? Well, my family's from Ireland. Why did I pick mid-15th century? Italian Ren. I wanted to be able to also wear an Italian Ren and still be in persona. So, okay, to be honest. But what would I do? What else about this time period and about this place would I be interested in? Me, like, mundanely, I like to knit, I like to crochet, I like to do things with my hands. So what else what of this would, say, my persona in the 15th century in Ireland be doing? I could personally enjoy that would be appropriate. And so I just started with like, well, what would it be like? Why?
Rabbit hole, like Nereügei was saying, you know, every question you ask leads to more questions with each answer, and you can follow
Exactly.
that down until you find something that just grabs you and makes you go, oh, I need to know all about that.
That's just the
Exactly.
beginning of another rabbit hole.
Oh no, I think we're not golfing.
Stop giving her rabbit holes, please. Oh, guess what? I'm this now, and my new title is this.
I will give actually Brianna credit, because this lady is a wonderful inspiration of ideas. I was thinking about doing this, like, because of course we've seen the sheep to shawl things, and we have all this stuff about wool, and everyone kind of gets the idea of how to deal with wool, whether or not they've actually done it or not. They can kind of grasp it in their mentality. But then what about plants? And so I started thinking about, well, linen and cotton and stuff like that. And along this lady comes and says, well, what about nettle? What about nettle? Well,
You can make tea from nettle.
oh, you can make cloth from nettle.
I've heard that.
Anything,
thread.
pretty much anything with a very tall, rigid stalk, you can make fabric from. It's a royal fucking pain in the ass, but you can make
It
fabric
started
from
this
it.
whole rabbit hole of me. It started this whole rabbit hole of me diving in and seeing, where did they do it? When did they do it? Do they have any proof of it? And I'm just like, there's my rabbit hole, on down that way.
Well,
Thank you,
and
Brianna.
everybody has their own. I think one of the things that I enjoyed the most when you were talking, Nereügei, is about trying everything. Like, doing all the things is absolutely like a life motto. But I've been in the SCA since I was 13. I've tried a lot of things and people. And the fact of the matter is, I had never really given a good try to something like archery, which is one of those base medieval skills. A lot of people do archery in the SCA. I had tried it, but I had never really, like, you know, with help, gotten very far. And it became a new passion. It became a joy 5 years ago. And now it's like, that's part of who I am now, is this thing that I had only just touched on. So trying things and letting yourself fail at them is so important to growing and to continuing to, you know, be young at heart. You never know what you're going to find is a new joy.
I would agree with that. I've been doing a few things lately and trying things out, and hey, you try out something and you might do really well, champ.
Champ.
Your Highness, I have a question for you. Have you heard anything from Bod when we'll all be able to start playing again in person?
After May 31st, at least.
Are you kidding me?
Just came
Oh,
out.
they just extended it by another 5 months. Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Hey, you'll have more time to practice everything that you're learning.
And hopefully,
Yeah, like sitting
any
on my
super
chuff.
friends.
I'm not allowed to
Mhm.
work. Doctor's orders.
perfect time to learn a new skill.
Make more garb.
Make more garb.
So you got hit while you were flagging? I was wondering where you had disappeared
Yes.
to.
Yes, I did. November 6, 2013, I was hit. It was a hit and run.
Oh my
And
God.
there were 2 of us that were hit, myself and one of my crew.
Oh, wow.
I'm sorry, it still hurts because that was my job, was to protect him. And I feel like I failed miserably. I can't flag anymore.
Oh, hon, that's so, I'm so
Wow.
sorry.
It's tough in situations like that when you feel like you're
I'm
responsible.
sorry.
No, no, don't be
It's just
sorry.
been just over 7 years and it still hurts.
Absolutely.
This community is here for you.
That's why I haven't been, because my shoulder was so sore. And yeah, I just didn't want to use people because I can't set my encampment up because my shoulder hurts.
You still
But I
live on
got to
the
be able to get it into the car and get it out of the car at the house.
You still live on the island?
Yes, I do. Still in Seagirt.
Nice.
So, Lord knows what my common law son has gone and done with all my camping gear. I'm going to have to rebuy it all.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Well, check
So-
first.
Yeah, check first.
Oh, yeah. I'm going to have to, but all in all, I'll just day trip for now. But
Check the
still,
barbarity too.
Hey, look, you know who to go talk to if you need to build a gear.
I do. And those are so much more roomier than a tent.
Oh, they are absolutely wonderful.
And
And
of
then-
all things, I have been so hooked on the Who from Mongolia. I actually was doing a bit of research into it going, now that looks like a very interesting culture I should dive into. And I really want to have a yurt, and I want to have the clothes, and I want to have, and my list just went on and on and on. It was a horrible rabbit hole I was going down.
It was
Speaking
super
of
interesting. Sorry, it was
speaking
super
of the
interesting
room-
being in. Go ahead, Shauna.
The photograph of the cheese on the cheese curds drying outside, it looked like there was a gur behind them that looked a lot lower than most of the other ones.
Probably for short people.
I'm wondering if that was either for curing the cheeses in or if it had been dug into the ground.
No, not dug in the ground. Different. Sorry, I'm trying to put up other slideshow. Let me just stop the share for a second. I got a bunch of random photos that I can have people
Shauna,
see too.
question for you.
No,
Yeah?
the gear was different tribal groups will have different styles of gear, and so there's a whole bunch of variations in the center ring, for instance, whether it has got the 8 spokes, or if it's 3 pieces going one way, 3 pieces 90 degrees to that. If it's just a plain ring with holes in it, all the different roof rafters are different shapes. So Mongolian gears have square ends towards the ring and round ends towards the walls. Whereas others have bent edges along the walls, and you get different shapes of gear. So all the different gears from all the different places all have different shapes, which is
Cool.
once you get into it and you start being able to kind of spot it, you're like, oh yeah, okay, cool.
It just seemed to me that the walls on that one were impractically short.
I think all gears, for the most part, like once you get to the edge of the gear, they're all pretty short anyways, but I was freakishly tall for Mongolia, right? So our gear mythology is different. I don't believe so. I'm just trying to think off the top of my head if I can remember some of the stories. For instance, you never lean on the center supports because they're holding up the gear, right? They are what supports the quote unquote what supports the gear. And so you don't ever lean on those. You also don't walk between them because that symbolizes the marriage of the people in the gear. And you don't want to come between them. There's all sorts of mythologies with the fire. There's all sorts of mythologies with the door,
Threshold,
and the threshold, and where things are placed. By and large, just off the top of my head, they all seem to be fairly similar, but I've also not looked into Tajik gears or Uzbek gears or any of those more Central Asian gear cultures. So I wouldn't be able to tell you. Like my experience is with Kazakh gears and Mongol gears.
I know when Curtis built ours in 1996, it was planned so that the walls would stand 5 feet high because I'm 5 foot high. It
Yeah.
meant that I could stand anywhere inside that.
Yeah, and so is mine is planned to be just over 5 foot.
Oh
See if
my.
this plays.
Oh, that saddle is gorgeous.
If you want me to like pause, I don't know if I can pause. I don't know if you want me to pause. I can pause at any moment, but we can
I
just
just
talk
have a
about this if you
logistical
want.
question for you. How are you able to get all of your stuff, all of your gear for camping? Do you have a big truck or like with your
Everything.
bed, your shirt, and or do you have another person that takes part of it? Or
Nope, everything fits in my truck.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm very impressed. Your
Master
ability
level
to put together
Like
is amazing.
Tetris a lot, I'm guessing.
Yeah, but he's only one person. Try doing it with a family.
You do.
Yeah.
Been there and have done that.
We get it in the van and for enough for the whole family in the van and in the trailer.
I have a friend of mine, my SCA sister from Port Alberni, and she literally would play Tetris with the car. The only free space was the front seat and the passenger seat. And she was doing it in a sprint. She had the encampment for 2 people.
Ooh.
Okay, explain this mask, please.
Oh my.
So the Buddhist mythologies, there's a lot of dancing involved. And
It looks like a wind god. I'm going with natives from the area here.
no, it's a god of vengeance, actually. I am not steeped in Buddhism, but one of the traditions is to make a lot of Buddhist art, and those Tsam masks are a big part of that going on right there. There's been a resurgence of shamanism in Mongolia in the last little while. One of my favorite experiences is being at that circle that I showed a picture of, and the shaman was seeing people from the countryside that day, and just being part of that experience, being able to watch it for quite a while. I just stayed, and that's a map of Ulaanbaatar and the turn of the century. And just being there was amazing enough, but he asked me if I wanted to partake in one of the ceremonies and essentially have my fortune told, and I can't say no. And he walked me through. He walked me through a lot of the rituals. There are 2 Irish pubs in Mongolia, by the way. I just wanted to point that out. Irish pubs are everywhere.
Irish pub, and they spoke Mongolian in it. Yeah. And you spoke English.
Yeah, you can speak English too. They have Guinness.
That works. Was it served warm or cold?
They were serving it cold.
Okay.
They're not that authentic. This one is Mongolia's first Irish pub. Very important to have that distinction, right?
And across the street, it's the second.
No, they were about 2 blocks away.
2 blocks apart, sure.
Yeah.
Oh my.
So yeah, tell us more about the shamanic thing.
Yeah.
So a lot of the shamanic ritual, it's this combination of animism. They call it Tengrism. Tengri is the sky goddess.
Is that what they sing about?
Yeah, and so
I'm sorry, I'm talking about a song from The Who.
Yeah.
I was always wondering how he pronounced it.
Mm-hmm.
And in English, it did translate to God of the Sky. I'm like, yeah, right, whatever. Yeah. But now that you say it, it's like, cool.
Yeah. A lot of milk and vodka in the ceremony. Washing with water that was boiled with steel that was pulled out of the fire. I remember the shaman pulling the steel out of the fire and licking it in order to imbue it with cleansing power, I guess, and then boiling the water, and then you would wash with the water. The ceremony with the milk, where you scatter milk in all directions as a sign of prosperity. I remember reading that is something that Shingasan did when he was on top of Burkhan Keed in order to curry favor with the gods.
Could you pause on that saddle tree, please?
Hope so.
I'm gonna need a
Just-
copy of that.
I just recently, I made
I
friends
promise.
with a woman who lives in Mongolia, and she runs a fundraiser to help the kindergartners and others like that. And they actually were auctioning off a Mongolian saddle.
Uh-huh.
And oh, it was just amazingly gorgeous.
Mongolian saddles are the most uncomfortable thing. Actually, no.
I warned
No.
you.
You did. No. It was the Russian saddles that kicked my ass. I'll go back to that in a second. But I have a recording of the shamans singing, and it's so eerily similar to First Nations here in North America, and their singing, and the drumming, and all of it is just, it was spine
I love
tingling
that
the
hair.
entire time. And I remember him looking at me when we were done. He had told my fortune, and how they do it is they chant, they sing. You place a bowl of milk on top of his drum, and he throws it up in the air, and that's what he reads as your fortune. And he flipped it up in the air, and I was watching him do this with other people as well, and he would tell them what was going on and whatnot. And he flipped the cup that I had put on his drum up in the air, and it landed on him. And that's a very good sign, apparently, I was told. And I remember him looking at me when he was taking a break. I remember sharing cigarettes with him because I had brought a bunch from Canada.
Smoke, or did you take them as a trading unit?
A little of both. I smoke clove cigarettes, and they've never had clove cigarettes in Mongolia, right? Or maybe they have. I don't know. They thought it was a real novelty. But I remember him looking at me like straight in my eyes and being like, "You're from Mongolia. Like, part of you is Mongolian." I'm like, "I'm Chinese," and he's like, "No, no, part of you is Mongolian." I'm like, "I believe you."
Well,
yeah.
didn't Mongolia and China have a close interaction at one point in time, and there is still that connection? I think it's Eastern Mongolia.
The Yuan dynasty was when Kublai conquered China finally in its entirety. And that is the time period my persona is from. The integration of Mongolians into the Chinese court is probably a bit of a misconception, because really they just adopted Chinese ways and became more Chinese, of all things. They would constantly make fun of Kublai and the Yuan dynasty rulers for being, sedentary city dwellers. So yeah, I guess, there's every possibility at some point back there that I have Mongolian heritage, but I'd rather not know for sure, because I don't think it actually really matters. I'm paying respect to the culture by being as authentic as I can in my exploration of that culture. And I think that's enough for me. So
Fascinating.
That's fair.
A question on how do you pronounce the name of these rock sites? Ulu?
Owa?
Owa?
Yeah.
I noticed that the centers seem to be fairly similar, but the arrangement of outlying rocks are different. And I was wondering what the significance of the difference is.
I don't think there's any significance. People do add stones as they walk by. People often throw things on them for blessings. This bridge, by the way, is a major highway bridge. Just FYI.
That's a major highway?
Yeah, that is the one big road out of Choibosan towards the eastern province.
Well, we have
I like the wobbly head dog on the dash. That was pretty cool.
I have a video of us like rolling along across the steps in this Toyota Prius, and the dog's head is just bobbing back and forth. It's just so good.
Well, we have Chona on, and you were talking about alcohol a while back. Do they also have mead over there like they did in Europe?
No, they drank the fermented mare's milk.
Okay.
Lots of it.
It would probably be difficult to keep bees with a nomadic lifestyle.
Yes.
Not
There
unless
aren't
you
very
found
many
wild
trees.
honey.
When you first spoke, Nereügei, were you speaking in Mongolian? Because you said a couple of things when you first spoke, and I didn't understand what you were saying.
Yeah, that was me saying, sorry, I followed up with the translation. It was very much like, hello, my SCA name is Nereügei. Thank you for coming to listen to me tonight. Yeah.
I missed
All
that
right.
part. I'm so very sorry. Could you please
okay.
say it?
Hold on.
The Russian influence.
Non-SCA, is that a
No,
BT5
totally
or a
not.
BT7?
Jure would know. I have no idea.
It's a BT5.
Yeah, okay. Sorry. Well, my War and Thunder came out, and I was like,
That looks like a Chinese tank.
it's actually Russian,
Russian.
a Chinese
Oh, it's Russian.
knockoff.
Big surprise. Chinese knockoff.
Ah,
Lots of giant monuments, like Russian-style monuments. all
Did
across the
you
landscape.
go and see the largest statue of Genghis Khan?
It's coming up.
The contrast between Mongolia and those wide, seemingly endless spaces. When I went back to the Isle of Man, like the whole island's only 30 miles long and 10 and a half wide.
Yeah.
So it's like totally opposite.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
would
felt
ride
like
for days.
I described it to Brynja as being able to put it on around me like a shawl.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
We're
this is
trading
totally different.
some of the cheese here. He's giving me some of the cheese from the Eastern Province, which I brought back to Ulaanbaatar to share with the people that I knew there. Just
Were
trying
you
different
allowed
cheeses.
to bring it back into Canada being a food product?
No.
Darn! You couldn't even smuggle it in, could you?
Oh,
Throw
no.
it in the armor or something.
Whoa.
keeping in mind this conversation is recorded.
No, I'm just kidding. Sorry, Garrett, I wasn't being serious.
Yeah, it's
No, I
okay.
didn't smuggle
Like, he
anything.
could really take his armor there, right?
I don't think I wanted to carry that much on the motorcycle.
No.
I can't remember the name of it at the moment, but their version of Polo, you get to see that.
Oh no, I didn't get a chance to play that. I really wanted to. This picture, again, I put it in. I've shown this to Bryony. There's a tiny little gare between the two white ones. It's a little itty bitty miniature one. And I
Danny,
saw
like
that.
your pupper.
Yeah.
I have a question I don't think anybody's touched on. What do they do about going to the washroom? Like, where do they
showed
go?
a picture
How do
of
they
an outhouse.
You're looking at
I
it.
don't want to know how. Like, I want to see pictures of them doing it. I'm just curious.
Oh no, you're looking at it. We would
Looking
this is
at
just
what?
a
It's an open field with the mountains in the back.
bathroom.
Lots of hiding places.
So what hiding places?
That's what I mean.
Yeah, exactly. That's
Big ol'
exactly it. We would stop, like the bus. I remember taking a bus down to Nereügei, which is on the northern edge of the Gobi, and we would stop for bathroom breaks, and everybody would just fan out in a circle around the
And turn
bus,
their backs to each other, correct?
do their thing, and come back in. Yeah, absolutely. There's no stigma with the body in Mongolia because it's all functional. Everybody understands. Everybody's got to pee. We'll just
Okay,
pee.
just practical
right?
note for me. How do you wipe your butt?
That was my next
Like,
thought.
almost everybody brings toilet paper with them these days.
The Aussies call it a dunny roll.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dunny roll.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, period-wise, do you know what they would have used?
No clue.
Stick. Yes.
There's no trees.
Right?
Actually, no, it was grass and sticks. Basically, very simple. Same thing with First Nations, which is what kind of comes up a lot with how Nereügei is actually helping the First Nations here. I am First Nations. I myself have done some history work where in actuality, I believe that my ancestors are actually part of Nereügei's people.
Yes, I've heard
Because-
that the DNA for Japan, for their natives, are very similar to the Coast Salish here.
because they did do trading across from Siberia and Russia, but ancestrally, we're talking almost prehistoric times. There was a mass exodus across the Bering Strait.
Yeah.
Down in.
You asked me about toilet paper. This is some of the toilet paper they had. If you look closely enough, you can see. No, it's sandpaper.
See your hand through that.
It was absolutely sandpaper. Oh my god, I had to take a picture of it. It was so.
Oh my god.
I'm sorry, guys. I'm being invaded by 2 kittens here.
It was exfoliating.
It wasn't exfoliating. It was more efficient at cleaning.
Oh, yeah.
It was a very
This
strong bit.
Words.
is a very typical.
Water, dang it.
So this is a very typical scene in Mongolia where you just have multiple roads going in the same direction, right? The roads are seasonal. The roads change depending on whether one part's washed out or muddy or not. You can have 15 or 20 tracks going in the same direction. It just happens to be across the entire width of the valley, right? So 20
Beautiful.
roads across 2 miles.
Is that embroidered?
That is embroidered.
I crave.
Or applique?
I drool.
There's a long tradition of applique in
Oh, that's lovely.
when they got to the reintroduction of the third wave of Buddhism, like it really stepped up and they started using silk and gold thread to do their applique with. But yeah, no, applique's been a thing in Mongolia for a long time. And,
What would they have used for dye? Because the outfit I'm wearing, the blue is indigo, the yellow is turmeric. What would they have used?
great question, no idea.
You should. The first talk that was given as the Lion's Den talk was Kiva talking about the traditional and locally foraged dyes. And lichen, I'm pretty sure, grows on the steppe.
Yeah.
So I would bet they would use lichen dyes. That's just
perfect because I've got some lichen I want to try making into dye and seeing what color.
You should talk to Her Grace Kiva. You should definitely talk to Her Grace Kiva about that.
Kiva, is she in Lionsgate or Sigurd?
He's Lionsgate.
Okay, I'm Sigurd. So
he's on tier.
So Nereügei, that last picture, was that a mountain in the background? What was it?
That was a hill.
But it wasn't man-made?
No, that was just like an outcropping of rock.
Here.
This picture here is an illustration of all the different fonts, I would almost say, but the different alphabets that they would use and different ways in writing them, right? So there's the flowing stuff, there's the round circle thing that they would use in the seals. The very squarish ones were used often on imperial seals. Lots of examples of different types of writing, like the old script. There's the Chinggis Khan statue.
There you go.
Matches,
oh, beautiful.
It's awesome.
There's a certain expression likeness.
You needed to. You could have worked more on that expression to look a little bit more like him, though. Come on.
I don't think I can look that fierce.
Yeah, you can.
You just kind of have to pout your lower lip and bring the corners down.
One of the things with the observation deck, it's on top of the horse's head. And most people don't recognize this, but you kind of walk out of his crotch in order to come up the observation deck.
I wondered about that.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a beautiful shot of the plane.
Wow.
I had a question going back to that ceremony that you were a part of. Is that like a seasonal type of a ceremony, or do you know?
Ooh, that's a good question.
If it was seasonal or happened at specific times of the year?
You have to book an appointment with your shaman, actually.
Yeah.
And there are good days and bad days for readings. And so they'll tell you, now, tomorrow's a good day to come, or next week's a good day to come, right?
How do they know?
They're seers.
Yeah.
Oh.
This is the end of the race at the Nadam, where the 250,000 people were on the field. It's a huge thing to touch the horse because the sweat of the winning horse is considered lucky. And so people mob the horse, and these poor kids on their horses have to be protected by the police in order to keep the crowds away. Yeah.
So, Brianna, how long does it take you to teach somebody to do that?
And on your horse?
Yeah.
I could do that in one lesson. If that's all you
Really?
want to do. Yeah. You just
Whoa.
need a horse that's calm enough and you need to be brave enough.
The trick is
Wow.
not standing on the horse. It's not falling off. It's the
It's
trick.
not falling off.
Yes, Garrett. So true.
I gotta tell you a story about these two. They've got that rope in their hand. The two of them had blocked off this bridge with that rope, and they were asking for 100 tugrug in order for you to cross.
How much is 100 togra?
100
They were
tugrug is like 5
exercising
cents.
youth.
Are
Oh
you
my
kidding?
goodness.
Wow.
I give him 1,000.
That's
Keep him
cute.
happy.
That is so cute.
No, we can't have inflation happen. No.
Tourists, I
Just
don't
little
know any
smiles.
better.
That's the tallest peak in Mongolia.
That is
and
beautiful.
Beautiful. Yeah.
the right side of the peak is Russia.
Right.
Oh wow.
Where
Wow.
your cursor is Russia?
So no, right, yeah, pretty much right over here. That's Russia. So if you fall off the ridge the wrong way, yeah, you end up
see it
in
from your
another
girth.
country.
Wow.
The other side of the mountain is China, right there.
Huh.
So
Very
right,
interesting.
right in that top corner there. I tapped out at 3,500 meters elevation. It was, I couldn't breathe anymore. It was hard work. Oh my God.
Wow.
Was it ever hard work?
Oh, getting back to the eagles, were you able to see them even training them?
It wasn't a training day, I guess.
Oh,
Yeah,
bother.
they have seasonal schedules with them,
Mm-hmm.
and the summer is just not training time. They train them, I guess, in the fall, right before they actually go hunting with them.
I'm
That's a
presuming then
stunning,
it's
stunning
too
photo.
hot.
It's pretty warm.
Glacier?
Yes.
Beautiful.
They've been saying how it's been receding quite badly for the last couple of years now.
Yeah, you can
Wow.
see the moraines in front.
Yeah, yeah. This is at 3,500 meters right here.
I was gonna say, was that at your top elevation? Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, and that
Impressive.
taxidermy was just absolutely horrid. Oh, gosh. It looked like they were all beginners.
Another thing I noticed is the Mongolian language sounds a lot like the First Nations languages here. Like when you were speaking, I didn't know if you were speaking in First Nations or Mongolian because it's very similar to me anyways. The little tiny bit of information I have on it.
I definitely don't have the ability to comment on that one, since I don't.
There's a few similarities in the letters that I think you pronounce the letter L is what you said, or the sound. That's actually similar to my language, which is Intswakatmuksheen. There's a lot of that, almost not quite guttural, but it's very much situated in the back of your mouth and in between the front and back of your mouth. There's some similarities, but it depends on what language you're talking about, because BC has
a very
lots.
clenched teeth, and you tend to speak between the teeth.
Yeah, I believe the linguists call that glottal in the back where the tongue hits the glottal.
For throat speaking.
Yeah.
Mongolian differentiates between front vowels and back vowels. So vowels in the front of the mouth that you make with your lips and your tongue versus the vowels that you make in the back of your mouth with your mouth and your tongue. There's a huge difference between the two, right? Ooh and oh, right? Like just.
I was
big
going to say, could you give an example of the vowels?
That's cool.
I'm just trying to like hun, right? That's like more at the back of the throat there. Hun and hun are two totally different words, for instance. That's so hard. Just learning to listen was so taxing mentally.
Is it kind of tonal like Mandarin? Because I know Mandarin's a very tonal language, so it could be looking the same if you were to write it out on paper, but the tone changes the
Whether
meaning?
it goes up or comes down.
No.
Change the meaning of the word.
Okay.
No, definitely not. This was a climb up Death's Pass. That was a long day.
Wow.
Because I speak Cantonese, and Cantonese has 6 tones, right?
Yeah.
Mongolian, it's kind of like German in the sense that you add suffixes onto the word in order to change its meaning. And Doubled vowels have the long sound. Short single vowels have a short sound, obviously. And you highlight the long sounds. So when you see it written out, you kind of know where the intonation happens, where the inflection goes up. Whereas in Mandarin or Cantonese, like, it's a crapshoot unless you know the word, right? So
Can confirm.
yeah, for sure. Shokan,
That's really cool.
Heart Lake, just tucked away in the
That's
middle
a
of
beautiful
nowhere.
photo.
Yeah, he's a good dude.
Did you ever feel alone out there?
I was talking about that actually. Bryn asked me that earlier. There were times when I don't think I ever felt lonely. I knew people were nearby. And really, it was only the first couple of weeks where I was in any kind of a situation where I could actually be alone. I've never felt alone. Yeah, goat shelves.
Oh, wow.
The hierarchy.
Yeah.
So
How
now,
to store your goat.
I know, I mean, I had never traveled extensively before Jure and I went to Europe last year. And it was a profound experience for me. There were moments and instances and experiences that I had that affect me very strongly, that kind of shape how I look at the world as a result. Was there anything that you feel like you can share that touched you that way, that profoundly?
We forget that in North America and Europe that we're connected, that we're all communities. There's this constant push for independence and personal gain in a way that just does not exist over there. Like, everybody knows that you work together or you die in the winter. It's a really strong motivator to make sure that you are on good terms with people, that you have dialogue with people. It's a really strong push to make sure that you can work together.
Oh, the main highway again, I presume.
Yeah, that's one of the ones through the western part of the national park I was in.
On that topic of community, it makes me curious as to whether or not they have any conflict resolution techniques that were new or interesting to you.
If they do, I wasn't privy to them.
What?
He was a guest. They would not have.
Cars having a shower.
That wouldn't have been a thing. You wouldn't have been brought in on the argument. You're a guest in my home. My hospitality says that if we're going to have a talk, we're going to go somewhere else, have our talk, and then we'll come back, and of course we'll be giving you our best family.
Best behavior.
Yeah, best behavior in front of you. I would also be interested in
and of itself.
I'd be interested in finding out how close to the language your language would be to Inuit, because of the throat speaking and the throat talk, and also throat singing that they do, which in some ways actually sounds like some of the throat singing that you hear from Mongolian artists.
Yeah, again, I wouldn't be able to tell you. Oh, here's an example of a Kazakh chair, right? So the center spokes are totally different. You'll notice that the holes go through the edge of the ring.
Yeah.
So the pieces are sized to pop in there. And the Kazakhs have the bands that go across and tie into the walls to hold
the
ring down, right? They have two center poles here plus a third pole in the middle, which is kind of next to the chimney, and they just take that third pole and kind of point it towards the wind.
I have a quick question about those bands and about, did you notice any forms of like card weaving or tablet weaving? Because those looked tablet woven.
Do you want to look at the ones I have?
Yes.
I did not.
In a word.
I didn't see like looms.
Mm-hmm.
I remember they were weaving reed mats, right? So they weave most everything. But they were setting it up so they were just weaving it vertically,
Mm-hmm.
right, without an actual loom.
Well, the card weaving and tablet weaving is done. It's portable, so
Or it could
You
be
wouldn't see
backstrap too, same sort of thing.
yeah.
I did not see any looms
Okay, cool.
that I was aware of, right?
The toe ring one.
I'm just trying to think if they would just tie things off to like a wall segment and just pull.
That's what
and then-
With a backstrap
Probably.
loom,
Oh, okay.
you just basically
Probably.
tie it off, you weave, and the rest ties onto you.
Yeah.
Yeah, you attach it to your belt, so it's portable.
And, you untie it, roll it up, and stick it in a bag when you're not doing it.
Yeah, there's a real because you have to
bring
carry
back some
everything with you.
Of that strapping?
I did, yeah.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
So yes, we have to see it.
I don't have it with me here. You'll next time we see each other, I'll have it in camp.
Yeah.
We have an appointment.
You are so welcome to come for tea. You know that.
That looks like a lovely encampment for us.
That looks like where I had dinner at 30th year celebration for like 6 days in a row.
That looks like Sea Lion Warren Seeger one year.
Every year.
Every year.
Just going back to the saddles, hey Nancy?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Oh my God, the Russian saddles were.
What the heck is that?
At the
I had one. Yeah, it's a
Yeah, but
dinosaur.
what type?
Protoceratops.
I was thinking, it looks ceratopsian.
Yeah, it's a Protoceratops, the little guys.
Parrot beak.
No,
so-
beakies, yes.
Yeah, because I saw the shield, but the beak part kind of threw me off. I'm going, okay, I'm lost.
No, they were beaky peoples.
Yeah. Oh, this picture of me is me looking really confused. Bye,
Did you
Chichiaka.
spend time in there and sell
No,
wares
because
for them?
I was buying headlamps
Okay.
to bring up north with me, and the woman was just, yeah, just wait here, just make sure nobody takes anything, help them if you can. And she left me for like 15 minutes to tend to the store while she went to go get my stuff. And people were like, hey, how much is this? And I'm like, I don't know. And they're like, what do you mean you don't know? I'm a tourist.
Canadian.
Goodness.
Markets everywhere. Yes.
Man, that was
Oh,
interesting.
lovely boxes. Storage boxes, I'm presuming.
Yeah, there was a museum with a whole range of these, and I took as many pictures of them as I could in terms of the construction. You can see the one on the right, there's a whole range of them. The one on the right is probably a very early one, unadorned. And as you move onwards through time, with more taxidermy, as you go through time, they become more orange and they become more ornate. They become more decorated. And now they've taken to carving a lot of the designs onto the boxes. And so, yeah, I'm still trying to figure out what early period, like empire period furniture actually looks like. There aren't too many paintings of those things at that time, right? So it's really hard to figure that out. The only aesthetic I have is that late period, 1575, 1580
That's
age
like
range with furniture.
later than you want.
Exactly.
This kind of looks
right.
like a forestry road in BC.
I was thinking, road to Clinton.
I'm sure I've been on a road like that here.
Yeah.
This is heading into the Darkhad Depression. You can see like we're up high and then it's sinking down. This is where the reindeer people are. Oh man, I can't even tell you how bad this landscape was because you can't see all the water running through it. This was a giant, waterlogged, rocky, tree-covered hell. I had probably 4 hours to get through this.
How tall
They weren't
were the
huge.
trees compared to ours?
They weren't huge.
They
A
were
lot
like
of
really
large.
big shrubs.
No, they were trees. But I noticed there was a real lack of saplings because I think all the animals eat them, right?
It basically looks like
So it was either
walnut
mature trees
substance
or
BC.
no trees.
Albino?
I love the reindeer. They're just stunning.
Yeah, they're pretty cool.
Santa
Oh.
misses them.
They click when they walk.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, their ligaments click when they walk.
Oh gosh. Mine click when I bend down sometimes.
Right.
Our reindeer then.
So you can see where they tie the horns. They'll tie pairs of them together so they can't run off quite as easily.
Yeah, the yoke.
Makes
Oh,
it
wow.
easier. Yeah.
Did you in your multiple pictures of things that were of interest to you, did you take any pictures of the strapping, saddling, or tack?
I'm sure I did. I'm sure I did.
You'll have to pull those all together, and then when we get together, I'll get to
Yeah,
oogie
for
He
sure.
knew he was going to have to do research for you also.
Yeah. Oh, I know.
In total, for your 2 months there, approximately how many photos did you take?
About, I think, 3,000.
Yeah.
That's it?
I was busy trying not to die in some cases.
Oh, okay.
Good night, Atan. A lot of the traveling, especially when I was on the motorcycle, I mean, there's 2 weeks right there where I didn't take too many pictures unless I stopped, right? Being on a horse, we were told, you be super careful taking out of anything. Like, they didn't want me to, there's my bastard horse on that horrible saddle. Oh my God.
Excuse me, language?
Oh, he looks pissed off.
For a beast.
Yeah,
Sorry.
your horse feels the same way about you.
He hated me. Dune sledding wasn't dangerous at all. Actually, I've got some photos coming up in a little bit. Yeah, he.
So happy.
Yeah, no, he was miserable.
happy
That
Oh,
saddle,
he looks mad. His ears are pinned.
that saddle was so worn down. The padding was so worn down. On my way into the tag, it wore saddle sore into my tailbone.
Yeah.
Because it was rubbing against rebar.
Oh God.
Oh.
Oh, man, that hurts.
Russian saddles, right?
Oh
That's
boy.
horrible. I would have rather gone bareback.
No, you wouldn't.
No. I learned to ride standing a
Throw
lot.
a blanket on, then
So Mongolian style,
go.
right?
Very cool.
Style.
I remember Brianna's just saying, "Hey, if need be, just stand when you need to ride," and that really helped a lot.
Good call.
So Usko's got a shortwave radio in his hand, right? And this was the best thing when we were out in the tag. At night, people would just
on the what?
the tag, taiga, right?
I'm used to the step. What is this you are referring to?
The taig is kind of like shrubbery, lichen. That's where all the ranger people are.
It's the tundra.
Yeah, pretty much.
Essentially.
Anyways, at night, the radios would start going off because everybody was like, "Hey, let's chat." It's so good. I loved it. Like
Awesome.
social media in a way, I guess.
Yeah, right?
Quick question. Is that one specific breed of dog, or do they tend to be sort of mutts?
Well, they're all mutts. They were all mutts.
That looked more like a teepee in the last photo.
It was. They still live in teepees there. The Totten people do. This was the way station. You see the horse skull on the tree.
Oh.
We knew that when we got here, cell phones would start working again.
Oh.
Oh.
So?
Yeah, we were in the middle of nowhere.
Is the
Yeah,
white
I see
horse
him
in
on
the
the phone.
is the white horse in the back yours
That's his horse.
again?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. He looks angry even there, looking at you.
So,
Yeah.
just so everybody knows that equine pain expressions or equine facial expressions, they can express their faces better than dogs can. They have more muscles in the face designed for facial expression. So that horse is angry, bored, probably in pain somewhere along the way. And just saying, I don't want to be here, and I'm not being allowed to graze, so screw you all.
Yeah, pretty much. They don't shoe their horses, eh?
No, they don't.
I was going to ask,
No, they don't.
why do we shoe ours and they don't?
Well, it's a very long conversation for some other time, but I can tell you all about it.
Oh,
Well, these
okay.
Mongolian horses are really small too. They're pretty much ponies. So I guess there's less weight on their hoofs. That might be part of it. I don't know.
Or the surface they're walking on?
Or the surface they're walking on, yeah.
A lot of it has to do with how much work in a day the animal does and over what surfaces. We started shoeing our horses to prevent wear down of the hoof because we were using them for 8 hours a day and not giving them proper nutrition to grow that hoof while strong enough. Whereas these are horses living in their own natural environment. They're not used for 8 hours a day every day of the week. They, like you said, they pull them in, they saddle up the ones they're going to use that day, then the rest go back out. So they're able to get enough nutrition to grow good hard feet.
Thank you.
That's one of
That
the
was very informative for that little bit.
So the dogs in Mongolia, before I went, I was reading stories on how the dogs will chase you forever, even if you're on a motorcycle. Stories about how they would like clamp on to your foot pegs, like just chomp on and just hang on. And so justifiably, I was like, hey, Ochku, are these stories about these dogs real? And she's like, yeah. You gotta be careful about the dogs. I'm like, okay. And so I remember one of the days I was riding alone, I was heading through a valley, and most gares will have, not most, a lot of gares have dogs with them, right? And I was riding over this ridge, I look over, oh, hey, there's a dog. Okay, I better go that way. Oh, hey, there's another dog.
Oh,
So
man.
now I'm trapped between two dogs, and I'm like, okay, I guess I just have to gun it, because at that point, they'd already gotten up and were starting to come towards me.
Oh, wow.
And so I just gunned it as fast as I could, and all I could hear was the whole time. And, you know, it felt like forever, but it was probably about 30, 45 seconds of them just chasing me nonstop, barking the entire time. And I didn't want to wipe out on the bike because that would mean certain death, I'm sure. And I was yelling at the dogs to stop. I was yelling at the owners. Hopefully they could hear me to hold the dogs back. Nothing. The barking stopped. And I kept riding. And I'm like, okay, I can look back. And I look back and the dogs are still chasing me. They're just chasing me silently. That was terrifying. But oftentimes, other times, you'll find stray dogs. And stray dogs will just follow you. And sometimes I was told that it's a good luck charm if a female dog starts following you. Good night, Shabay.
Oh.
And so, like, I riding into the Taig, a dog followed us out of Tsuganur, the little village. And the dog followed us almost all day. Got about halfway there, ran into some other people who were nicer to him, and followed those people back. Like, that's how the dogs are there, right? If you're nice to the dogs, they'll stick around with you. This is the workshop with the bow maker.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So they had like 4 machines and a pressure cooker to boil the hooves down for glue. Like,
Were you able to bring a bow back?
yes.
Were.
No.
Will you use it, or is it just for show?
I'm worried that I need to let it acclimate more. I have not strung it since I gotten back because it was built in dry, high altitude, and now it's down by the water. I'm just very, very leery of stringing
That
it
would
up.
that would actually mean it was much more likely to stretch and give and probably be softer to draw. You probably don't need to worry about damaging it because it's absorbing more water.
That's the hope. I hope that the water doesn't make the glue lose its hold.
Hide glue and hoof glue is like water resistant. You don't need to worry about that.
Oh,
I will
really?
very carefully stretch it then.
Talk to Athelina Gray. She's done a lot of work with hide glue.
Yes.
And she uses it to put her fletching on, and that stuff holds against the worst of the weather.
Yeah. Okay.
They
I
use
don't
it
know if
for
anybody
instruments
saw
as well.
Oh, the hat!
the hat that
I love the
Sienna
hat!
made.
That Sienna made in her furrier class.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah, she asked me, hey, have you seen hats like this? I'm like, as a matter of fact, here's a picture.
Here you
go,
go,
Dana.
One of the things that I'm fascinated by and I'm really enjoying especially about our discussion about diversity is that we're synthesizing knowledge. As you share your experiences and everyone asks their questions and comments on things that you've seen and that you have available to you, it's broadening people's understanding of how diverse the world is and how little, like when we narrow our focus, how much we throw away. So I'm loving this. This is wonderful, and I love that you and Sienna have shared some knowledge back and forth about that kind of thing. And I just think that's where the SCA needs to be heading. I think that's one of the best things about these talks and things.
It also gives us common points too.
Yeah.
You're talking about those areas of intersectionality.
Yeah.
Yeah, fighting is very limited, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have to be able-bodied. You have to be able to. Yeah, those are the dangly things for women. That's what you were asking.
Dangly things? Do
They're for grooming.
Combs?
No, they're not
Like
combs.
hair
They hang off the belt.
It looks
Which
like
I-
the Norse ear spoons and stuff like that.
Yeah,
like
exactly, right?
Yeah.
Which I then learned was also a Manchu introduction.
Very cool.
After the Ming Dynasty, after the collapse of the Mongol Empire.
Oh, interesting.
And it was like, in terms of continued growth and strength in the SCA, ANS is so much more accessible to so many more people.
Yeah.
And you can see how it actually broadens our understanding of the Middle Ages much more than fighting does.
Yeah.
Right. And this is speaking as somebody whose personal motto is drink, fight, and look good. I love fighting.
Well, in order to drink and look good, you need to do arts and sciences. That's kind of the.
For sure, absolutely. But I mean, a lot of SCA culture centers around the fighting. I mean, sure, it's flashy and whatnot, but how do we make ANS more acceptable? It's not acceptable, but accessible to people, right? How do we bring people together to share those experiences? Like you're talking about the synthesizing. Like this is how we grow networks.
Yeah.
Not just events of where we get together when we fight, right?
Yeah.
One thing is make the ANS more visible.
Yeah, exactly.
Things
Make
like
us
the heraldry and the banners and
make us the shiny people.
Yeah.
Well,
Sorry, that wolf looks like it's being goosed.
It reminds me of Puss trying to clean Boots, my two kittens, and she found his manhood, even as a baby. She tried to remove it, and that's what his eyes look like.
Wow.
Poor snow leopard.
Cat. Oh.
Wow. Never saw it. It looked like headdress spanning out from the poor thing.
I had mentioned earlier about how sometimes I feel like I'm trapped between trying to do the fighting and the ANS at events, right? Like it's a weird intersection to be in, to be able to do the fighting, but so much of wild ibex hard to find.
Oh, cool.
I learned how to take photos with my phone through a pair of binoculars.
Wow.
That's why it's like weirdly filtered.
skills you learned along the way.
Yeah, exactly right.
Getting back to your bow, what type of material would they have used? If in England and Europe they would have used the yew tree as the ultimate wood for the bow, what would they have used in Mongolia?
Horn.
Horn.
Horn for the bow.
Yep.
Yeah,
laminated.
It looked like they were working on looked like laminated horn.
Yep.
Actually, from the animal you just saw pictured, an ibex.
Ibex, yeah.
Yep. I don't know if fighting and ANS are at loggerheads. I don't think they're mutually exclusive to each other.
They're not compatible.
It's hard to do both. At the
Hard to
same
do
time
both
at
if you
an
have
event.
responsibilities.
Yes, exactly.
I gave up
So-
fighting when we had children, because really, if somebody's got to watch the kids, and so it was Kurt who kept fighting, and I found that there was more time for music and more time for needlework and other things in not fighting.
But with ANS, that can also be integrated, or it can be pulled into your heavy fighting because you have to make your armor. So there's an art in itself.
Yeah, but making armor is one of those things that's really inaccessible to a lot of people.
Yeah.
Right? Like I remember stating that I am extremely privileged to have access to all the equipment, to have the knowledge, to have the time, to have the money to do all these things in order to make just helmets. I haven't even learned how to do breastplates or anything like that. Articulations are difficult. That's my buddy Richard.
On sand.
So my best friend Richard came up to meet me. That first photo off the very beginning was us standing on top of the tallest dune in Mongolia, taking a picture at sunset, right? And we carried those boards. We used those boards to drag ourselves up this dune. Oh man, that was hard work. But we got to slide down them at the end, and that's him going ass over tea kettle and pouring sand out of his feet. And we were covered in sand in every possible location. It was so much fun.
Water he's standing beside.
It was so much fun sledding down that thing. It was so much work.
What type of reptiles live there? Like spiders, snakes, scorpions, that type of creature?
Those are not reptiles. Those are.
Well, there were snakes.
Well, whatever.
They have snakes. They have lots of lizards. A lot of mice, little things. It's not like everybody's got that feeling that, you know, the Gobi is just endless desert, and parts of it are for sure, like that sand, the sand dunes and all that. But so much of the Gobi is that low shrub with a little bit of grass that's just really, really sparse. And there's so many creatures. Yeah,
Cold desert as opposed to warm desert, as they used to say in our geography classes, right?
Exactly. This is the applique. So you can see the detail on the handle of the belt. That's all gold thread. That's all gold thread here. This is all silk applique. It was amazing. I've got so many pictures of this stuff. It's so beautiful. But this is a later art form, right?
Yeah.
This was done after the 1560s.
Did they also do the hair art?
I am unfamiliar.
That's where women who had obviously long hair, when they brushed or combed their hair out, they would keep the hair, and then they would do embroidery work with it. It would take a very long time, of course.
Yeah, for sure. I didn't see any examples of it.
Oh, okay. Maybe
it actually comes back to
China.
the circle pieces on that headdress.
Yeah.
Those look like they've been made out of human hair.
That was hair, for sure. That was hair.
And probably taken out of a brush by the look of it. It's slightly matted.
It might not be human hair. It could also be
horse hair.
Could very well be horsehair too, yeah. But I don't know, if I don't clean my hairbrush out for 3 weeks, that's what it looks like when it comes out.
I'm in the process of saving my hair from my hairbrush so I can do the buns on the side of my head properly. I discovered that in my rabbit hole.
If anybody
Nereügei, do you do your helms in your shop at school, or do you have a workshop of your own? Or
I just work after hours at school.
That's nice that you have the ability to do that.
Yes, huge privilege. You're very welcome, Kinerick, Ariana.
Yeah,
thanks for joining me.
Results, by the way.
Is that a turtle face?
It is.
It's really cute.
It's in a field in the middle of nowhere. There's my buddy Richard riding the turtle. But it's important to give you scale.
Nowhere fast.
If you look really carefully
Dr. Doolittle.
Yeah.
One of Hugh Lofting's turtles.
If you look really carefully under his arm, you'll see a big square hole.
Yeah.
So the supposition is that this was one of the two turtles that held up the center pillars for the Khan's Ger.
Amazing.
Right? That's the understanding.
That's very cool.
Okay, I want to know how they transported those things.
Braided streams.
Very carefully.
Very carefully, with a lot of work.
It was such an experience to be in a land where I'm like looking at the rivers. I'm like, oh,
look, there's the river scars.
the Hairland, and I'm like, wait, I know that name. It's because somebody wrote down in history that Chinggis Khan and his men traveled along that river in order to move from one part to another. Like I was literally walking through history, and it just adds such a a dimension to understanding the culture, right? When you can experience that history, and I know a lot of you who've had a chance to go to places that your personas are from, know that feeling, right? It's so immersive,
It
you know.
took
And I
me
know
by
somebody.
surprise. It
Yeah.
surprised me that
Yeah.
Did you
I
miss
would
it once you
feel
left?
that much, that powerfully about places I literally have never been and yet felt so connected to.
Yeah, it's because you've studied it for so long.
Yeah.
Or your
know, and
family history is such. I
Yeah,
know I
exactly.
walked up to the top of Bradda Head in Port Erin and looked down at it and thought, my mother's seen this view, my grandparents have seen this view. The buildings that were originally along that road were built by my great-grandfather or
Wow.
great-great-grandfather. And I sat there and cried.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, that's a connection that we don't necessarily have here in North America, especially if we're immigrants, you know, especially if we're indigenous, where that's been taken. We have to find that connection because that's what
We've
makes
allowed our
communities strong.
history to be taken from us too.
Because that's what makes what?
Communities.
Makes our communities,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, but we've also allowed our own personal history from our ancestral lands to be taken from us, where we've been immigrated into the culture here. Some of us.
To be fair, like when it comes to people immigrating here, they're looking for new beginnings, right? You can still celebrate that history, you can still celebrate that culture, you can still celebrate all those things that made you who you are. It's a little different when the culture is forcefully taken from you and you don't
Mine
have
has been
a say,
lost
right?
in time.
Yeah,
So
for sure.
I have no knowledge of my Scottish ancestry or my English or my French ancestry.
And that's why being able to go and explore something like this in persona is just so powerful, to be able to go and reconnect, right?
Which brings me to a question on research. How much of Mongolian culture has been recorded in some form of hard copy and how much of it is still oral? And in cases where most of the information you're looking for comes from an oral tradition, how do you do your research?
This was the exact same problem that Lord Tenich was talking about last talk, about how so much of Mayan history and culture is oral, orally passed down from generation to generation. There are only a handful of written sources from Middle Mongolia, and one of them has been lost, of all things, but the rest of them have been heavily interpreted here and there, right? It's very rare to have written documentation that is from a Mongolian point of view. And so much of the research into Mongolia comes from period sources from cultures outside of Mongolia, people who were invited there or brought to Mongolia because they were subjugated, right? So a lot of Persian writers have
Some of them
written
were
about.
slaves too, weren't they? Did Genghis Khan also have slaves from the people he beat in wars?
Yeah,
He would take
for
some
sure.
as slaves.
Especially the artisans. There's whole corners of Kharkhorin, which was the capital at the time, where there's a craftsperson's sector to the city, and all they would make tiles or they would make pots or whatever it may be in that corner of the city. There was a religious section where all the major faiths were represented. There was all sorts of court-related buildings where learning would happen. Like Kublai would bring practitioners of Chinese medicine to the court and integrate them, right? So they speak of the Pax Mongolia, where the Mongolian Empire essentially guaranteed safety on the Silk Road as people traveled through it.
Wasn't it Temujin that also brought the first passport to the entire world?
Yeah, so the little tablet thing that you see with a little hole in it, that's a Garrig. And that's used as a passport to signify passage because they are sponsored by whoever's on the passport, right? So much of Mongolian history is seen through the eyes of other cultures. Even when it came to the documentation for my name, I had to go from Mongolia to other Turkic cultures. I finally found the examples that I needed through the writing of an Armenian monk who was talking about people in the area with names that were negative but protective in nature. There's a passport right there. Right. So in terms of research, it's difficult. Plus, you have to learn Mongolian, or you have to learn Russian or German because that seems to, or Turkish because those seem to be the other major languages of scholars in the area. So, yeah.
So basically, if a culture has pretty much nothing but an oral tradition, your only course for documentation is generally going to be tangential or colonizing cultures.
And this is how trying to find ways to decolonize the SCA is important, because we should be able to introduce oral tradition, oral cultures. These are legitimate cultures. These are legitimate histories. These are legitimate experiences that the SCA can't document, and therefore they don't allow it. Right?
A particular point here is when you're documenting something like a name, it has to go through the College of Heralds. But if you're documenting anything else, you need to ask, why am I documenting this? Why is it important that I understand where this comes from and when this comes from? If the reason you are documenting something is to compete it in arts and sciences competition or to prove that you can research something, when you draw on oral history that has already been translated from its language of origin, you are introducing incorrectness into it. So I'm not saying that you shouldn't be able to use oral history. Your point about language is really important. And one of the things about documentation, it's right there in the word document. An oral document is not a thing that exists until you have the ability to record the language as it is spoken. So from like the early 1900s on, when we actually started to have recordings of voice, we don't have documents per se for things that were recorded in oral traditions. It's very, when you have the possibility of adding an inaccuracy. So for example, in documenting music, and Kushag is going to know what I'm talking about here, there is a form of pipe tablature for bagpipes from Irish and Scottish traditions called kentirect, which means from the head to the fingers. And that's the literal translation of kentirect. It means from the head to the fingers. They would use language to explain what the piper should do with his fingers. And the speed at which they spoke it was the speed at which you played it. That form of passing along musical notation by a form of tablature that is 100% oral and write downable in nature, that doesn't rely on the 5-bar staff, is a very rare thing. And even though they were able to document that kentirect did not change significantly from the 1500s through to the 1900s, there were errors introduced by individual interpretations, so that a piper reading a kentirect passage from the 1500s is playing something. He goes, oh, I recognize that. That's McGregor's March. But these 3 notes are different and the tempo
Well,
and
also,
it introduces the error. Is it a Piebrecht or is it an anthem or is it a march? He's like, I learned it as a march, but according to the Counteract, it's a Piebrecht. It's a pipe anthem. It's meant to be played slower and more stirringly.
yeah.
And
Even the 5-note staff, if you evolve from the 4-note staff and evolve from other things, and even those are subject to interpretation. So, are we going to interpret this as duple rhythm or triple rhythm?
right. And the thing is, if you are documenting something so that you can be more accurate and more respectful of the culture you are drawing from, which is part of it, but as Nereügei has pointed out, you don't necessarily know the meaning behind things and the way things were done and why. You don't know the deeper cultural significance. The best you can do is go, they did this, I have that from this source, and I can't pursue the provenance of that information much past that because they learned it from their grandparent or their uncle and it passed down through the ages that way. If you are documenting something for an arts and sciences competition from an oral resource like that, it depends on the level at which you're competing. If you were doing Kingdom Arts and Sciences and you had only oral documentation for everything you did, then yeah, you're going to be marked down because it's judged by a Western standard of documentation.
Yeah.
But if you're talking about doing it for personal reasons, then it doesn't matter as long as you're being respectful of the culture and aware of the gaps in your own understanding, because you probably don't speak the language from which it was drawn.
Some of you may have heard this story. I was once asked to do a display, and I sat and had my table, and someone came and asked me about the embroidery that I had done on one of Curtis's undertunics, and it was the embroidery around the upper arms at the seam and also around his neck. And they said, do you have documentation for that? And I said, well, if you mean, do I have documentation for that particular pattern in those colors and those positions on a tunic that was styled just like this? No. But I do know that this pattern dates back to the 10th century in the Isle of Man. It comes from stone carving on tombs. The same pattern is also seen in calligraphy and illumination of the time period. The colors I've chosen are similar to those in the palette of those things from that time period. Do I have documentation for that pattern used in that position on that style of tunic? No, but I can document that pattern from that time period, the colors that were used, and the fact that stonework, woodwork, and calligraphy and illumination all cross-pollinated. Yes.
And that's actually one of the things that's very good about the SCA's desire for more authenticity, is that we're not trying to recreate the exact garment, or we're trying to recreate the feel and the functionality.
And that's one of the arguments I have with some of the things that I see done for ANS competitions, is that the expectation, I'm not sure whether it's by the judges or whether it's by the contestants, is that we are basically recreating artifacts, and we shouldn't be. And,
well, I mean,
to me, that's one of those things that that might be a step on the way, but what we actually want to do is recreate with respect to the style and the period, but recreate create rather than recreate.
Yeah. Well, and the thing is, it does depend on what you're doing and and that's why my point about what are you researching for? If you're researching so that the authenticity maven who comes up to you and goes, can you document that? You can say, to period, which is 1600, yes. To the specifics of this persona and garb and whatever, no. But to period, yes.
Part of my feeling toward that has a lot to do with this sense of gatekeeping, right?
Yeah.
Of what knowledge is correct knowledge and who dictates what is correct knowledge. You know, even taking away from the competition aspect of it, trying to do things in ANS, in the SCA, is nerve-wracking enough when you're bringing things forward, even if you aren't putting it into a competition. Like I guarantee you, a lot of people have been like, oh, you know, like I was pretty proud of this, and somebody came up to me and goes, oh, right? And that's a horrible feeling. That is a horrible feeling for a lot of people, and I really feel that
especially for the newbies.
Especially for the newbies, right? So how do we get community together in order to, you know, applaud people for trying in the first place, and also helping them along to create things that are more authentic, right?
I love that we're even talking about it. I think that's the first stage in acknowledging that this is a problem. The gatekeeping, authentic pursuit is a problem in the SCA.
This is something I have said for years too. It's probably one of the reasons why it took so long for me to be a Laurel.
Probably, which is really unfortunate, because you've been a force for, I think, a great deal of positive influence in the Laurel community. And
sorry, go ahead.
Well, I guess the thing that I have a quick answer for what can we do to help build the community and to encourage the triers. And it's something that was a tradition. It's a historically accurate tradition to Western Europe, and it was a tradition in the SCA when I joined, which is the giving of personal tokens, the recognizing of the effort that someone has made. Like, for example,
I never knew about that.
Well, and it used to be a thing. I have tokens. I had a little bag of gelt that people had given me because they were like just little things. Somebody's like, oh my God, I love that Russian thing you did. Here are my earrings. And I'm like, wow.
Whoa, I've never had that done.
Personal tokens is, there are people who get their own coins cast so they can give coins to say, I appreciate it.
I've got a token from Amanda and Gerhard that
is
one of the most precious things I have.
I have an Amanda cloak.
This is the thing that we can do, and anyone can do it. It doesn't matter if you're a peer or a person who just sits around the fire. It doesn't matter. You can create or purchase or give out some token from you to those who impress you, to those who are trying and who you see and go, I see what you did there and I'm really pleased with that. And here's a thing, and it's just a small thing. Like, I buy bangles at Value Village, and I give out bangles as a ring giver. I give out a ring to say, I'm really impressed by that Bardic thing you did. Please don't ever stop.
What I like to do is compliment the person and make note to them what I am impressed with, whether it is a piece of garb or their hair or something they've said or done.
Yeah.
Even if they've encouraged another person, it's like, hey, I really like how you encouraged that brand new person. Or if it's their very first piece of garb, and I know it's not period.
If we can re-add the giving of personal tokens. If we can re-add the giving of personal tokens, and
I think that would be wonderful.
Back into our expectation of how we behave at events, we pass that culture along to the next generation of newcomers and further along. And we empower them to continue to try, and we empower them to recognize when they see other people trying. And I think
Are you sure you don't want Mongolian teepee, Jure?
Yes,
Are you sure?
I'll take some.
I'll take Mongolian.
Even in terms of garb, you know, it's been a long time since I joined the SCA, and back in the day it was, you know,
polyester T-tunics.
Oh, I've got a polyester gown that is now, it's still being worn 40 odd years later.
Okay, if I saw it and you were a new person using polyester and the garb looked like it could have been period, but I know the material is wrong, I would have complimented you on the effort you had made to make garb to fit in.
But the thing was, we weren't required to do so in the day. All they asked was period garb or an attempt thereat.
Yes.
We talked
about
a
long skirt and a peasant blouse was perfectly fine.
That is what I wore to my first event. we talked about this during Sir
I was
Antonio's,
loaned garb.
discussion as well, is that there's a bit of power creep with the expectations of authenticity have gone way up.
Way up,
But-
yes.
Oh God,
but
yes.
we don't have to. I stand firm on the plinth of, if it's for competition, then follow the requirement for authentic, as authentic as you can make it. If it's
Yes.
for personal reasons, you learn more by doing and wearing the thing and going, oh, maybe they did their sleeves that way because it's more practical, or it's more impractical, or whatever. You learn by the doing, and it's experimental archaeology in the doing of it.
Well,
I used polyester to dress my children in. I tried to use
well,
period
that's
cut,
different.
but polyester
Polyester
cleans
for
better.
children is period. In my books, polyester for
Then Dana
children
laughs
is
at me.
period.
So,
Oh, they grow too fast. But I did learn why they did put decorative pieces here. This is actually two separate pieces of cloth.
Yeah.
Because my cloth was one solid long length of 10 plus feet. I forget how long. I got my measurements all written down. But my sleeves, like, you will not see a join here or here because that's one piece of cloth. It
You join the
ended
sleeves on and you reinforce the seam.
I covered my seam, even though it's hand sewn.
Yep.
I hid the seam and made it decorative.
Right.
That's why they have these.
Or it reinforces the seam.
That's my thought.
On the topic
yes.
of not gatekeeping, I'd actually like to ask for some help because
No, there's never any help for you, young lady. You know far too much. I'm sorry, there is no help for you.
I have
I'm
difficulty
sorry.
when somebody is doing something that I know how to do.
Back off.
And this is their first attempt or their third attempt, but they're just starting out on something. And it's a good first attempt. But
oh gosh,
how do I say this is really good for somebody who's just starting?
Okay.
Here are
Find something good to say about it. I really like the way you've done this. Have
Right,
you
Kevin.
thought about trying this?
Never use the word but when you are trying to encourage a person, because they might have had a very, very horrible experience in childhood or young adulthood from that word but. Because they might have put their all into it and you don't know that.
Yeah,
Just
that's my point is
encouraging them.
they did something. They put a lot of work into something. It's just
let
I
them
can
know how
see
hard
all
it
the
was.
flaws in it, and I know how to correct all those flaws, and I would like to pass that knowledge on. I'm not good at being tactful in passing
No,
that
you are not. I'm sorry
Okay,
to be honest
you know
with you,
what?
Shona.
Shauna, that self-awareness is actually a tool to your benefit.
It
Because
is.
you can start that conversation by saying, wow, I really like this thing that you're working on here. I've tried to do that myself. I'm not the most tactful person in the world. That's how you finish that
Okay,
sentence.
let's just go with that.
And the other thing is offering like, there's a big difference between offering
Ask if they want advice.
Yes. Ask if they want to. You're like, are you going to be doing this one again? Are you going to try that again? And if they say yes, you're going, I've tried this myself. I've got some pointers if you want some feedback.
Excellent.
And then don't offer it until they go, actually, yes, I want your feedback. Because the biggest problem I've ever had has been the unsolicited advice.
Oh, I just shut them off when they unsolicited advise me.
I work in a field I see a lot, and I'm a professional in that industry. If I'm watching it and it's not dangerous, just wrong, I zip my lip until they're paying me for it. That's my problem.
If they're going to harm themselves implicitly, like
yes. But if somebody's doing something and they're like, I'm trying this thing and I'm trying it for the third time and it doesn't seem to be working, and I know you know
what
stuff
am I
about
doing
this.
wrong?
Can you help? Then jump in with both jack boots on. But
Hold on.
Often the phrase,
finishing your first
have you
sentence,
tried
I
this?
did. I love
No.
that. It's very cool. Are you planning to do it again? And I'm the least tactful person in the world. Like
Tona, knowing you personally and how you enjoy speaking to people, try not to speak above the person or their knowledge level. Speak at their level. don't try and be dominant, be an equal. That
I
might
think,
get
I
through a
think
little.
if you're,
I'm sorry, I'm sorry, it doesn't sound
you've
positive.
got good tips here.
Oh, hello,
I
darling.
think complimenting the person on things that you can truly and honestly compliment them on, I think is an excellent idea. And you can also go so far as to going, I recognize how much work went into that because I've done that myself.
Yeah,
If you ever
that's a
have
really
any
good way to
questions
put it.
Halima,
about
you're
it,
missing your
feel free.
ink. You're missing your ink there, Halima.
I'm missing my ink.
Yes.
Oh.
Yeah, I've been. Oh, there is a Dana. Hello, Dana.
Comment about feedback from people. I went to art school and we had critiques of everybody's artwork, which is something that you need to learn how to do properly. And where I'm going to school now, it's also something we get feedback from our instructors, and there's a special way to do it. We call it sandwich feedback. You do positive what you liked about what it was, something that I see this, and I'm wondering if you thought about that, something that would think might be improvement, and then you finish off with another compliment.
Yes.
Coming as an educator.
Yes, that would work too.
Coming as an educator, we've done sandwich compliments for a while. It works, but like the kids catch on to it so quick. You're like, oh yeah, okay, blah blah blah. And at least in my department at school, we've moved towards a model that integrates the sandwich with specific ideals behind it, and we call it being kind, specific, and helpful. You can be critical of something while still being kind. Having that compassion, knowing that you've been there because you were that new person at the very beginning. You can be kind. You can say kind things. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're tossing fluff at somebody, right?
Is there a way to get them to engage in positive criticism upon themselves, where they can critique their own work in front of you?
And that's something
Or
I
would that
work
be
towards.
would that
with
be
my
like
students.
stabbing themselves in the foot?
No, it's something I work towards with my students. I talk a lot with them about being self-compassionate and just being understanding of yourself and where you were. I often talk about how whatever the projects are, right? Whatever their projects that they're working on really are just snapshots of their level of skill and proficiency at that moment, right? When I come back to talking about being kind, specific, and helpful, you have to be specific. You can't just say something, oh, good job, right? Like find something, if you are going to be critical, that's specific that you can tell this person to improve on. And of course, make sure it is helpful, right? It's really easy with a sandwich to just throw in, oh, hey, nice work. It's not helpful. It doesn't actually say anything. What part of it was good? What part of it does need help, right? So doing a sandwich through the lens of being kind, specific, and helpful seems to be the winner right there.
Yeah. Well, I know from personal experience recently, especially with my garb, I did take it to an ANS night here in Seagart, knowing I was going to have it critiqued, which I did want it to be. And I had never, ever in my life hand sewn anything. I'd never been taught hand sewing. That's when I learned from beautiful Morgane, I am a human hand serger. And from another lovely lady who just recently moved here, I was taught that I did my gores wrong for my skirts, but both were absolutely blown away by how tiny I made my folded hem for my neckline and asked me how the heck I did that. So with that being said, I learned that I had to take my gore out completely and re-sew it. But I remembered that they were totally impressed with how micro tiny my neckline seemed.
Right. So you were encouraged to do the thing that you did well again.
Yes,
and continue to do
absolutely.
And you learned something from the experience.
Oh, yes. And it was
That
all
sounds like a
done
very
that
positive,
well.
very positive, constructive criticism moment.
Yeah, but thank goodness I took photos because I look back going, oh my God, that was so awful looking. How did I ever do that?
One of my favorite things that they've done at the SBA, one of my favorite things they did at the 12th night was they requested of the Laurel community, please bring your first and your fail.
Oh my God!
To a display, to an ANS display.
That
they
would
went,
be my
okay,
dress with the sleeves from hell.
It doesn't matter what the object or the item was. It showed, they were able to go, here's where I started. And you were able to walk through this display and go, oh God, oh, I do that better than they did. Oh, okay. But you were also able,
I used the wrong material on my first dress.
Oh God, there were some phenomenal examples.
I had like layer upon layer.
When I joined, there was no wrong material.
There was no wrong material.
This was current material.
Yeah.
Kushag, I love your veil. It's gorgeous.
Which one?
Thank you, Jonah.
From
all right, we should let Nereügei go. He's getting tired.
I was just about to leap in and suggest that it's getting pretty close to bedtime for some of us here that have to unfortunately get up in the morning.
I'm not allowed to work, so I don't have to get up in the morning, dang it.
Tomorrow is school day, Dini?
Yeah.
Where do you teach, by the way, Nereügei? I'm sorry to pronounce it wrong.
It's okay. It's Nereügei. I teach in what?
Nereügei.
I teach.
Let's say it all together.
Nereügei.
I teach at West Vancouver Secondary here in Vancouver. You know what? Kids everywhere, they're pretty similar. I mean, the parking lot's a little different here, but
way of putting it.
They go through the same problems. They have the same growing pains. They have the same confidence issues and the same problems all kids have growing up. They just
and I think
come
higher
from a place of
expectations
different-
from them.
For sure.
Because they come from good backgrounds.
Yeah, there's pressure there for sure. We have a lot of immigrant families who live in the district, and a lot of kids who come over from North Vancouver as well. Like, honestly, like, kids are kids. They need the same things, right? They need people who believe in them. They need people to be kind to them and they need to learn how to be self-compassionate to themselves so that they can grow as individuals. If there's anything that I've learned from teaching that I can apply to the SCA, and very much in terms of the topic of the talk today, in terms of ANS, is we have to build that community. You know, we have to be kinder to each other, and we have to uplift each other. You know, like I said, that very short, very chance meeting with Torquil showed me a lot. You know, he's seen a lot in the SCA. And he looked at my piece of crap casting and said, you know what, it's pretty good for first go. Let's keep at it. You know?
I like that.
Right? This is what I liked well of what you did. Hey, let's try something different. Right? Like, we're going to be able to explore in whichever direction we want. We need help along the way. I would not have been able to do Mongolia without help. I would not be able to do what I do in the SCA without help. You know? And so, I mean, to wrap it up succinctly, like, we are
a community.
Yeah.
We are a family. We are a community.
Yeah.
And that's what keeps some of us coming back.
It takes a community to raise a child. We're all children. We're all learning.
Or grandchildren. We're on our 3rd generation in the SCA now.
Yep.
I'm actually bringing my granddaughter in. My daughter doesn't want to play. My son-in-law don't want to play, but my granddaughter's coming along because she gets to dress like a pretty princess.
You're great. It was really great to actually see some of the slides. And
I have been waiting to see some of the slides for.
I'm envious.
Let me know what you want to see. I'll see if I can package some
you
pictures.
know what I need to see.
Yeah, everything horse related. I got you.
And Curtis needs to see those the GER pictures.
Oh yeah.
I yelled for him, but he's gone already.
It's his loss for now.
He snoozes, he loses.
He goes to work. He starts work at like 6:30, 7 o'clock.
He's excused.
Yeah.
Well, this is being recorded. He could watch it later.
No,
There you go.
I'll pick out a bunch of photos for him.
I'll tell him to go and that he should go and what do they say when you watch the whole series?
Binge.
Binge.
Oh, binge on it?
Yeah, binge watch.
I'll be posting
Yeah.
last week tonight. I realized I forgot to post the link for it up until now. So I finished the editing on it on Friday. I just forgot to post the link yesterday and today. So
and thank you for everything, Jure.
You're most welcome.
Yeah, thanks, Ray.
Thank you. And thank you, Nereügei. Thank you, everyone, for coming. It's been fantastic.
Thank you for the invite from Sigurd.
Yeah. Well, tell everybody in Sigurd to come. I mean, I can take 100, and we only have 34 or 35, so, we can have more people.
Why not post it onto our wall? Then you'll have more people come out.
It's supposed to be Lionsgate thing, but, tell people about it. Let's spread the word. The one at the end of the month, the Onto Your Players presentation will be heavily attended, we're pretty sure. So.
I do have a request.
Yes.
Could you have one where it's specific, where we can all ask questions from beginning to end on how to develop personas and how to look for different things, like
Sure.
search
Yeah, we can do a general. Yeah, let me talk to
I just thought I'd
for
put the
Grace, who
request
does
in
sets
right
up
now.
like a 3-person panel. Any old questions?
Yeah, because basically I have a basic year. I have a name. It's had to be modified. Supposedly I have a rich uncle in Scotland who travels. He's a baron and brings me things back from foreign lands. So that way I get away with wearing East Indian pantsuits and clothing from other cultures. That's my way of explaining it.
Curtis has a really good explanation for us having a gur.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. When we were like 13th century, 13th and 14th century Isle of Man and the Isles. Ask him sometime.
All right. Anyway, but I'll talk to Kiva about that. It will probably not be until March because we're pretty much booked until March. But every weekend, every Sunday. So
in other
thank
words,
you
I'm
again.
not working until at least the end of April.
Yeah, there we go.
I have underlying health
now
issues.
And booting us all.
Yeah.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody.
Thank you very much for attending, and thank you, Nereügei.
And thank you, Nereügei.
Nereügei.
That
Getting
was
better.
extremely educational. Thank you. I've added more to my Mongolian knowledge.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care.
Take care, everyone.
Take care. Good night.